What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the GTR show. Pleasure to have you on board. And this is going to be a great show. If you are as maybe just 1/10 as passionate about gear as I am, this should be kind of an interesting journey. I'm going to do something I normally don't do, which is why I actually talk about what my personal favorite gear is, why I use it as my go-to gear, and it's the sort of thing that as a gear demonstrator you can't do in the middle of a video that's, some for hire piece or something that you're doing, for example, for Worship Musician Magazine or whatever it is that I might be doing. You can't go, oh, and this right here is my favorite. So this is one of those rare instances where I actually get a chance to go, this is my favorite. And again, for your, and I like to say I'm an expensive friend to have around, but for your purchases, kind of like, these are the things that I think you want to keep in mind around a range of pieces of gear broken down into some specific areas. So with that said, first of all, down in the chat, you've got the different links for asking questions. I am working on working with my new best friend as I'm streaming, not Melissa Doppler, who's down in the chat. Thank you, honey. But the Focus Fox. The Focus Fox helps me stay focused, which means that basically for the first part of the show, I generally try not to answer questions. I'll see little stuff pop up in Ecamm Live, which is the streaming application I use. So if I say, oh, hey, so-and-so, it's because I saw something come across the stream. But that said, focus, 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 focus. All right, so let's start at the beginning of the signal chain. Guitars and basses. I think most of you know, or some of you know, I've been an Ibanez guy for a long time, coming up 25-ish years. I've been through, a lot of different seasons as a musician, putting out my first record, and right around that time, Ibanez sent me the first endorsement instrument, using their guitars on a bunch of the Guitar Hero stuff, using it on My Favorite Nations disc, touring all over the world around that disc, all across Europe, all across the United States. Just those guitars have served me incredibly well. At the top of the list is my much beloved S470 that's sitting at Gary Brower. In case you don't know, Gary Brower is the guy in the San Francisco Bay Area who works on Joe's, Kirk's, and I don't know, my guitars. And so I'll be paying a visit to Gary soon and bringing that puppy home. But literally from the first moment that guitar showed up, Rob Nishida, who's no longer the artist relations guy at Ibanez, but he sent that and I was like, you know what? It's kind of like the best of the Strat and the Super Strat all combined. I managed to not include something on the list here, so I'm going to have to just kind of ad-lib. I apologize for that. Pickups. In particular, there's one pickup that if you've got some sort of Super Strat, that if you're looking for the best neck pickup ever, it's the DiMarzio PAF Joe. It is the most organic blend of the best elements of a PAF and a traditional Strat pickup put together. A guy named Steve Blucher, the designer at DiMarzio. That pickup, I've never played any other pickup that comes close. And that one really is just the best. The Virtual 2 middle models, what I got in the middle position, that's a narrow aperture humbucking pickup. And then in the bridge, I've absolutely forgotten what I had in the bridge. But Tone Zone, of course. Great sounding pickup. But the PAF Joe really can't go wrong there. Okay, American Original, I didn't get tabbed in there, but that is the American Original 60s Strat. I'm looking around behind me because it's actually, I kind of pulled it out for the photo. Again, I'm going to just kind of give you all my whys. And so, because for me, these are the reasons, and they may or may not serve you, but the goal is to serve you. And the best I can do is speak from my own experience. Fender right now, has hit a stride that I've never seen any company step into what they've done, with maybe the exception of Dunlop with the post-downturn in the economy. When the economy took a nosedive, the Dunlop guys bought all the ads on the back of the guitar magazines. Their marketing and their products and the people at the company are great. They're just phenomenal. Fender right now has hit a stride. They're producing the best gear, and they have the best people. I talked about this a bunch. I'm going to go behind the gear here and grab said pink Stratocaster But a bunch of review instruments came across my desk last year, and this was one of the ones that did. And it's kind of, if you will, my Jeff Beck Strat, but it does the Stevie Ray and the Jimmy thing also well. The funny thing is the wife says, like, a pink guitar? That seems so unlike you. I was like, nope, this guitar does it all. And, if you're looking for a great instrument that does vintage but has, all the intelligence of modern manufacturing, you just can't go wrong with this. Also on the list, was sitting on top of the amps, cabs are there earlier, is the American Acoustasonic Jazzmaster. Of that line of instruments, the Acoustasonic Jazzmaster is my favorite. It's the loudest acoustically. It plays great. You've seen me kind of talk about that before, so I don't have to live there too long. Then we get to the American Original 60s P-Bass. Hang on. There we go. First of all, I love these vintage kind of pastel-y colors. I know they're not necessarily, metal, but the moment I saw, I have the privilege of kind of being able to choose which instruments I want to review. And when I saw this show up, I love the tortoiseshell pickguard in this color. I was just like, and I was just like, and it's, this has become my go-to studio bass. It sounds great. It plays great. And, the whole thing about this, and again, I want to give you guys the reasons, not just like, I kind of like it. The whole goal of this line, and this bass in particular, was that if you walked into a store in the 60s and could pull a P bass down off the wall, this was designed to be as close to that with a few modern tweaks as is possible. And they just nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. All right, stomps and effects. This is interesting because, I've got all sorts of modeling gear floating around. Analog Man King of Tone. If you haven't had a chance to play one, I don't think, with maybe the exception of the Quad Cortex, there has ever been as much hysteria about, like, I can't get it, right? I want it and I can't get it. The Klon's been attainable for a while. Yeah, the price has gone through the roof, but it wasn't like you couldn't find one. It's not like you can't reach out and get one today. But the King of Tone is just, it's all that. And, if it's also, what are the things you look for in a pedal? One, does it work in a range of different settings? Yes. Is it stackable? Yes. Does it sound great? Yes. Was it the most common pedal across all the pedal boards at the last Experience Hendrix tour? Yes. That should tell us a lot right there. Does Kenny Wayne Shepherd use it? Another great reason, right? But it sounds great, and you've got the two different sides, and it's kind of the one drive pedal that's just like, you just kind of can't go wrong. And there's a reason people are out of their minds over it. So it's just that good. Eventide Time Factor. Now, why did I choose that one out of all the different pedals? When we get down to the amps side of things, boy, I'm watching the chat blow up, so I apologize. Hey, Andy, guitar, what's going on, my man? When we get down into the whole amps thing, we'll talk more about some of this other stuff. But in the modelers, before we get to the modelers, in the amps, focus. So when we get down to the amp section, I'm going to talk about the Marshall JVM. And so when you're using a traditional amp like that, the time-based effects you're going to use for that really matter. You can actually see that's literally Joe Satriani's, that's a JVM 410 JS, that's Joe's amp that he's kindly got on loan to me. And that amp sounds amazing. I actually think it sounds better than the regular JVM 410H. But in those settings where I've had the privilege of sitting in with Joe at those jams where it's just... And Joe told me about this, and I probably have blurbed this a bunch of times, so forgive me for repeating. But one of the things that Joe told me very early on, this was probably 20 years ago, he said, and this was, right around the time that he was in Deep Purple, or touring as a member, out on the road with Deep Purple. And he said, you just got to be, when it's time to be loud, you just got to be able to step on a button and be loud. And so the thing is, the ability to actually be loud in that situation. What delay am I going to actually step on? The time factor is great because when you get on a loud stage and that stage is vibrating, one of the things, I love the H9, but if you've got cables plugged into it, that thing has a tendency to tip off the back of the amp. The time factor was great about it. It's this nice, big, heavy box. It ain't going anywhere. And the great thing is if you want a knob to adjust the filter to adjust the high end, so to make it a little bit more vintagey, so you pull a little bit of the high end off, you can just go to it. My go-to one is basically a dual vintage delay, so it's basically a tape echo, and I can choose how much high end I actually want to have coming through. That's one of the other things that Joe taught me years ago. He said, don't run your delays at full bandwidth. You don't need all the top end coming back and messing with your next transient. So I've always taken that to heart. I follow 95% of the advice Joe's given me, and it's always been right, but every so often I just kind of have to take a different course by choice or by stupidity. Modelers. Okay, so they're in a couple of different categories here, so let me explain what they are. I'm going to start at the end of the list with the Fractal Audio Axe Effects. There was an experience at the Tom Morello Guitar Camp where Billy Hallidale, I hope I'm saying his last name right, from A Perfect Circle, he used to be Slash's tech, and he kind of went from the back line to the front line. But I was in one of his classes, and he did this thing where he kind of finished, a solo, or kind of playing, and then this echo disappeared off into infinity, and it reminded me of an experience. Again, I've shared that here before, when Pro Tools HD was new, and I was in the studio mastering some record with John Cuniverti at the plant when he was the mastering engineer, and he pulled up some Satriani and Jeff Campitelli hitting a cymbal, and the cymbal disappearing into nothingness. No hiss, just literally just the natural decay of the cymbal going into nothing, and that room was a multi-$100,000 room, and John Cuniverti's like genius, but that experience of just hearing it just disappear into nothing with no hiss, no noise, the perfect decay. I was like, wow. So in Billy's class, he did this thing and he hit this echo at the end, and it was the perfect decay of like this perfectly slightly messed up delay because it was kind of a vintagey tape echo thing, but it just disappeared as it trailed out into nothingness. It just was the perfect decay. Like if anybody's the best effect you've ever heard, that would be it, besides maybe some of the stuff on surfing. So the fractal stuff, I think pretty much everybody, who's spent a lot of time with all these units pretty much says the same thing. The fractal guys, the best sounding effects. Everything else is phenomenal in there. They also have something called Speaker Drive, which is for those of us who geek out with speakers. And I'm having a Celestian speaker party here this weekend. They've got that component where it's not just a cab block, but the idea is you're going to beat that cabinet up like that little Boogie 112 behind me. I'm using it. What's this? I think the Power Stage. What are you? The Power Stage 170. Yeah. So I was abusing that little sucker with that's a 150 watt speaker. I was abusing it not all the way on 10, but with 170 watts power. When you start beating up a speaker, it starts misbehaving in some really nice ways when it's intentional. That speaker drive element, there are things that the fractal folks understand, and there are things that you understand when you do component level modeling that you really, as opposed to kind of taking an entire, let's say profile, we'll leave it there. Not that there's anything wrong with that process. There's a Jose modded Marshall that's hiding back there that I did a capture of with the Quad Cortex, and it's just like, it just sounds like the amp. But that's different than the expertise of what you get when you do component level modeling and spend so much time basically creating an ecosystem that Fractal has done that, again, core users like Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, John Petrucci. So the in terms of effects alone, let's just talk effects. Fractal, Fractal, Fractal. They just own it. Just give them all the credit. HX Stomp XL. Where are you? Hiding. I'd probably put it someplace safe. I need to make sure this thing doesn't get in frame. I got something that's under embargo that's here. So HX Stomp XL, I was on the phone with my friends at Line 6. I think I might have mentioned this previously. But I have the privilege of knowing Eric Klein at Line 6. and he's been extremely generous with his time and his insights. So HX Stomp is, I think, arguably for the size, there's no piece of gear on the planet that delivers what that box delivers. It's just incredible. But the thing is that you got 3 foot switches. I like to step on stuff. I like to be able to control stuff. So the MC6 is from Morningstar is a brilliant, and that's not actually on my list. Another piece I missed. It's in my opinion the best MIDI controller out there. Their GUI is phenomenal, and so the ability to use that with something like HX Stomp, or in the case, I was on the phone with those guys. I said, hey, I've been spending a bunch of time with the GT1000 core, which I left off my list of modelers. I knew I was going to miss stuff. So hang on. All right, there we go. Let's see if we can do this. Hey, there we go. GT-1000 core. Hey, real time. Look at that. All right, good. GT1000 core. I'm locked. Hang on just 1 second. Let me edit that. That's strange. There we go. We'll get there. The HX Stomp XL, what they did was they added these 6 extra foot switches, which basically dramatically extends the capability. So that's going to win the award for existing product that got a refresh. That puts that as a fly box, and the Quad Cortex will fit in your gig bag, but that as a form factor, they really kind of took what they were doing, kind of went. And saying, because I was on the phone with Eric, and I just said, hey, I confessed I've been spending some time with the GT1000 core, and he pulled up HX Stomp, and it's basically GT1000 core with an MC6 added. The point being is those guys listen. They've got a thing called ID Escape. They're constantly tuned in. Quad Cortex, in terms of out of the gate, let's capture some attention. It's a phenomenal piece of technology. I am working on a video with all the Celestian speaker stuff behind me on amplifying this with various different power solutions for Celestian. That video will come out this next week. And as I was working through tones yesterday, Melissa hears all the process, and it was probably the most immediate. I came upstairs, she's like, oh, that sounded really good. I said, well, was it the last thing? Because I always want to know what it is that kind of resonated. She said, actually, all of it. And it started with this, and this guy will be on the list, this little Theo cabinet, just ridiculously loud with the Petrucci 7-string. And when it's that loud, and she says, hey, it sounded really good, that's a really good sign. So in any case, as a capture device for amps, there's an interesting thing. We're at a paradigm shift in the business where if I were a stomp box manufacturer, I would be extremely nervous because this is an MP3 moment for the industry. I think there's going to be a record number of people for the first time who are going to step into a product line that enables you to basically capture your favorite amps. But if you think about the number of stomps you own compared to the number of amps you've got, people are just going to capture their stomps and flip them. I believe. I would like to be wrong, but it's an MP3 moment. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. GT1000 core. I erred in not adding that to the list. That was stupid. The Boss folks, as a bunch of you heard, again, I hate to say, I've said it like 4 times, but let me find a better way of saying it. You might have heard me say before, I used the GT1000 stuff on a bunch of the Guitar Hero sessions because it sounded great. And at the time, in my opinion, it was the closest to the sounds that I needed to get for particular songs that I was going for. I used my Marshall TSL on the Winger track and on the Extreme track, Play With Me. But for the Scorpion stuff and the... most importantly, Iron Maiden, I got the closest that I possibly could get with the GT stuff. So I've been an active user of their stuff for a long time. And Jeff Slingluff, who used to be Boss, also did a bunch of stuff for MXR. So the M300 Reverb, at Line 60 did the DL4. He was also extremely involved with the HD 500 stuff. He's a brilliant designer. Also involved with the Waza Tube Amp Expander. So the GT1000 core is something he's had an active role in, and it's a phenomenal piece of gear. And honestly, of all the companies listed there, they get the least love, which is why I'm glad I didn't completely forget. All right, amps. Okay, got to break this down into a couple of different areas. And I apologize that I'm not down in the chat, but this is me and the Focus Fox hanging out. More caffeine. By the way, in case you haven't seen RJ Ronquillo's show, that's on earlier here, can I encourage you to do that? I'm sure you probably have, but there's usually some coffee involved, and I love RJ, and he's killing it right now. So boom, RJ, to you, man. Okay, excuse me. New amps. So I have done a little research, and to the best of my knowledge, the Marshall JVM 410JS is no longer in production. But I have both the JVM 410JS Joe's amp on loan here, which would be, if I were to go out and buy one new, if I could buy that new, that's the one I would get. Mine is the JVM 410H, which is the second best high gain amplifier for me. I am kind of at the end of the day a Marshall guy. And I've always wanted to be a Marshall guy. And, whether it's Jimmy or Joe, all the play, and that Jose modded Marshall, it's just ridiculous. Like, it's that actually, to tell you the truth, I have that modded Marshall here. I will not share the schematic because that is not the thing to do. We will be making the captures available on Quad Cortex format and also on the profiles available on the Kemper format. And I'm working on a project right now that I will not talk about yet, but we're going to be doing some really cool stuff in the area of not just captures, but making it really cool in that environment and providing some big value added. That said, the JVM 410H is a phenomenal amp. It has that fourth channel and the third channel, honestly, that I've always wanted a Marshall, where you just plug in, you're just like, there's that soaring lead tone that I've always wanted. Somebody was commenting about, people seem to be, I know who it was, so fixated on this super distorted channel. And the reason being is when you get into legato land and when you get into tapping land, that extra bit of sustain that you kind of people quite often have to step on one or two pedals, which is why people stack pedals quite often to get that level of sustain. The JVM 410H does that. The challenge in those really loud situations when I'm sitting in with Joe is that power amp starts to overdrive when it's playing that loud. That's the one thing. So it's the thing that I said to Joe, and he's kind of like, what, you're new? And I said, you just got to keep remembering to turn the preamp distortion down, because when the power amp gets to a certain volume and it starts doing its thing, if you have too much preamp distortion, you're going to create mud. Because part of the thing, just like the speaker drive I was talking about before, is that when that power amp starts overdriving, it's no longer operating with the efficiency that it does at lower volumes, which means you just actually have to back off on the gain. Fender Tone Master Deluxe Reverb. Sorry, that didn't get indented there. And so the thing about that puppy, let's see if we can't fix that. Hold on just one second. Tone Deluxe Reverb. Okay, give me just a moment. That'll help. Okay, good. Nope, didn't take it all. Great. All right. Oh, hang on. No, hang on. Sorry. Call him Mr. Retentive. Let's fix this. There we go. Okay. So the Fender Tone Master Deluxe Reverb, and part of what I'm also wanting to do is not just go what's my favorite, but honestly, it's actually one of the few times I'm actually, if you're looking for an amp, this is my suggestion of what to go out and buy and why. If you're looking for a clean amp, it is basically a Fender modeling amp, which is like, the vintage people probably cursed their name and cast 1,000 spells, but they're just great. And you have the ability to go direct out. They've got, depending on which model you get, the newer one has had a couple of revisions. It's got a Celestine speaker in it, which I think is very interesting that you're seeing Celestine appear in more and more Fender amplifiers. I kind of love that, but it's a very interesting thing. The point being is that, if you want to have the same vibe of a deluxe reverb, which everybody pretty much loves, but bring the volume down, but kind of get it wherever you want it. There's power. There's kind of virtual power scaling, which, in case you don't know what that is basically taking the wattage of the amp and bringing it down. So, say for example, you like the sound of a deluxe reverb at 4, which is different than the deluxe reverb at 2. One of the things that people say about Fender amps is when the volume's too low, it just sounds a little unexcited. There's not quite enough stuff going on in the circuit. And conversely, if you get it around 8 or 9, it sometimes just is a little bit too much. So the idea is you can set the amp, let's say at 4 if that's your sweet spot. And then with the power scaling, you can bring the whole experience down, but maintain that nuance. It's doing it virtually, but it's doing a great job. The other thing that they got right, and in my opinion, better than in the actual deluxe reverb, is the actual reverb. Sounds great. And then the ability to go direct out with the older one and the newer one. You actually can't see them, but they're on stands up there, on that big kind of stand back there above the two Marshalls. They have different mic modeling. The black face one is a combination of a 121 and a 57. The newer one is a 57 and a 421 Sennheiser, basically. But if you can kind of put them together, on the one I get the Royer 121, and on the other I get the 57, so I can kind of use them in stereo on the kind of the direct out SIM, and I can get both. And that was kind of the thing with just one. The first one gave you the 57 and the 121. The newer one, the blonde, you now have a choice of a 57 or a Sennheiser 421. And both of them also give you the ability to just go direct out without any IR, which means you can apply your own. But, in terms of like, hey, if I were going to go out, and they're light, and they're not grossly expensive. So if I were to go out and go, hey, or I was going to, she said, hey, what's the best clean amp to go out and buy? That's the first at the top of the list. All right, Rev D20. You're going to see more and more and more. And boy, I hope you guys are enjoying this. A question on the vibroverb. Okay, so hang on a second. 15. We're going to get there. Thank you for asking. All right, Focus Fox is back. Okay, so the thing is, the Rev D20, we're going to see more and more amps like that. The PT15 is another great example. But the Rev D20, in my understanding, was the very first reactive load embedded amplifier on the market. And in particular, it's got 2-notes torpedo remote technology that it interacts with. That amplifier as a standalone head, if you're like, Doug, what's the best head that's, not $1 bazillion, not a high gain deal, but basically is a deluxe reverb in a box with a pair of 6v6s, has a great sound, great pedal platform, and you can bring it inside the box and don't have to use mics, you don't need a cabinet. That's it. It's first in show in a class that you're going to see explode. And again, the Fender one is actually kind of like that, but it doesn't have a reactive load classically that's in there, right? Because it's a digital amp. But the D20 is it's a great sounding amplifier. It has all the vibe of a deluxe because it's got a pair of 6v6s. Dan, the guy that's a designer at Rev up in Canada, he understands amps at a very deep and wide level. So when you see, in case you didn't know, when you see the power amp tube set, it's often going to tell you an awful lot about what the amplifier manufacturer was thinking about in terms of the history of amps, because most of the amps that we see these days are tethered to some historical amplifier that is either a direct descendant or a direct disciple of, right? And in that case, it's like Dan really kind of, everybody loves, I've never heard anybody go, I hate deluxe reverbs. So he took that, but he added all this other stuff. There's basically gain. And the other thing that's great about that amp, in addition to having the 2 notes embedded, which I'm going to go there for just a second, enables you to basically swap out and add a virtual power amp, and then all the great speaker modeling and all the great stuff that the 2 notes guys have been just crushing it with. You also have the ability to go pre or post power amp and run that amp at 4 or 20 watts, which basically means that if you're a tube amp geek, the idea of kind of like what I was talking about with the deluxe reverb is that one, you can choose how hot you want to run the power amp. Two, you can choose whether you're going to run that power amp at 4 watts or 20 watts. And that gives you a number of different ways to manipulate how much power amp overdrive you're actually getting. And in turn, you can choose whether you're going to go pre or post power amp. So you can use the virtual power amps in the two-note software. Like in terms of kind of like, I'm not even going to say it's rabbit trail, it's tone trailing, where you can kind of go, I'm going to craft the sound that I want to. I've got a great sounding preamp. I can put pedals before it. And then the ability to go in afterwards and go, all right, now I'm going to use KT88s or KT66s. Is there an 88? KT66s, which by the way was kind of the original Marshall tubes that are in, and I think 60. 90%. Somebody can add that in the chat. Eric, what's going on, my man? I'm 90. Hold on. Okay, hold on. Fact verification. Hold on, just 1 second. Tubes in. Hold on. KT66. Let me just see. Yes. Okay. I think the KT66s were the tubes, and I'm not going to be able to verify this right now, that came in the original. Yeah. Okay. I can't actually tell you the difference between KT66s and 88s. My bad. But at least I'll admit it. A little humble pie, have a little slice for breakfast. Moving on. The deal is those KT, somebody will know it and they'll have it down in the chat, were the ones that came in the original JTM amplifiers. They're a different sounding tube, but when you find people have chosen a particular tube, they're doing it for the character of the power amp sound. So when you see a 6v6, that's kind of the essence of the deluxe reverb. So he chose that in there to really kind of capture that essence and then build this brilliant infrastructure around it. It's the smartest amp on the market, in my opinion. All right, and then followed up by the what? Fender Mustang 100. For those of you that have kids, and or those of you who want just a great practice amp, while I actually like the Spider stuff, the Fender Mustang 100 is the most ridiculously kind of sleeper amp on the planet. Like, you know, of all the gear that I'm going to talk about, that you could walk into a music store and just walk by and never give it a second thought, the Mustang stuff is phenomenal. I was on a PR call yesterday that I can't talk about yet. And I finally got a chance to kind of watch the guy that's in charge of all their modeling and cool stuff kind of, hold court. And they're just owning that thing inside of Fender way, which is so cool. And so the Mustang 100, just the next time you get a chance, plug into it. Like, and sometimes I'll use that when I'm teaching. And I plug into it, and there is not a Saturday that passes that at least one person doesn't go, what are you playing through? Like, in the kind of like, what the heck is that? I'm like, yeah, it's a Mustang 100. And they're like, what? All right, workhorses. Roland JC 120. Mike Mogg, my buddy from Freak Executives, sold me his in probably 1985. I've had that amp. It's right behind me. For all these years, I'm using it in this Celestion FR LR speaker demo, and I swapped it out. Actually, there's this second one's actually got to go in there, but it's got the F12 X200, which is their 200 watt speaker, and then the one I'm putting in there that was supposed to have arrived last night that didn't, which is the F12 M200 150. So I basically every so often, I kind of lose my mind. If I'm working on a gear demo and I don't have what I need, I'll buy it. So I ordered an extra F12 M150 from Anderton's and had it shipped across the sea because I needed more speakers. Celestion kindly provided what they were able to, but the inventory right now, they're in the process of filling orders. So they were able to send me what they were able to send me. So I also bought one from Anderton's in Sweetwater. So the Anderton's one is in something back there, one of the Marshall cabinets. The point being, The JC120 is a workhorse amplifier that I've used for many decades. You've heard it on Metallica. In case you didn't know, and this is the kind of mic drop moment. Always with you, always with me. DS1 JC120. Mind blown, right? Everything we think Joe Satriani would never use a solid state amp. Go back and listen. It's what it is. I know for a fact. So the point being is that it's a great amp. And the thing about why I'm using it for these FR/LR demos, it's two 60-watt solid-state power amps. So the idea is to drop it in, drop the two speakers in, left and right, the two different speakers, have solid-state power. So it's an amp that many of us have hanging out that we can go, hey, you know what, I've got some sort of modeler. So this first video for the Celestian folks is all about using it with the Quad Cortex. So I've basically, put together all these different types of speaker combinations with different power amp options, big, small, in between, such that, whatever it is that you're going to potentially use, I'll hit that over the course of the demos or something very close to it. So the point being is that JC120, it's got the CE1 chorus built into it. You've heard it on Duran Duran, again, Joe Satriani, Metallica. It's kind of like when you hear that classic clean Metallica chorus tone, that's James in the JC120. But it's just great. The other thing you can do with that amp is you can use an AB box for the gigging combo. And on one side, you use your clean channel, and ideally for the chorus. And then the other side, you use it for your lead channel, so you can kind of EQ them a little bit differently. And then with an AB box, you put all your stomp effects before the AB box, and it's basically 2 amps in one. And I've done that a lot. The funny thing is, back in the day, actually, the funny story, I think I've told this here, Joe Satriani, so I used to share a teaching studio with Joe. He went on tour with the Greg Kihn band. He said, hey, can you come take over teaching while I'm gone? I was like, yeah. And then when he came back, we alternated days. So I would sneak in the middle of the night and play his early Ibanez guitars. I fessed up to this, so he knows now. But he also, one of those times, he said, well, that's good to know, because basically I stole your Gorilla GG110 and used it on one of the Satriani records, which I thought was hilarious. I don't know what track it is, but I had these little GG110s with these great little Gorilla amps with a 12-inch speaker. Loved that little amp. I had 2 of them. And one just kind of stopped working. The other got stolen out of a buddy's car. But I would use those 2 GG110s and come out of the preamp out into the 2 different channels of the JC120 and use an AB box in between the 2 of them. As I recall, it was actually this really early AB box that Joe sold me. Yeah, long time ago. We're talking 80s here, folks. Okay, so the point being is a workhorse amp. It's got a nice reverb. On this particular one, there's a 3-way toggle switch for the power. That is to say, the middle position is off. And up and down, as I recall, would invert the polarity, such that if you had some sort of ground hum, it would usually go away. Great amp, great sound. 2 12-inch speakers, can't go wrong. Vintage, Mesa Boogie Mark II C+. I'm on a mission to buy amps because I'm going to be profiling and capturing them. Making a collection for purchase available, but not just the right models of amps, but the best versions set in the most musical way, such that if you're going to potentially onboard with those things, to the best of my ability and to the best of the people on the team that I'm putting together, say no more. That you just kind of like, that is the way it should be. Because you can model, there's one particular outfit whose name I won't mention. They have the worst profiles I have ever heard, and they're hugely popular. And I'm just like, how's that even possible? It's just like, I'll leave it there, but it's just like, just because it's a profile and just because it's a capture doesn't mean it sounds and feels good. With that said, and that's not me big noting, it's just like when you hear something that sounds bad, you just go, that sounds bad. Stop. Or fix it. Something. I digress. Mesa Boogie Mark II C+. That is the holy grail of boogie amps. It's the Metallica amp, and Justice for All. It's check out Ola, kind of paying homage to that amplifier. It chugs. It's got a great clean channel. It's the iconic Boogie. So I had the opportunity to pick one up. I now own one. It's a great sounding amp, and I just remember sitting in the room as I was testing it out, just kind of going, just kind of like it's the guy that I went down and picked it up from had this kind of Van Halen EVH guitar. I was like, and as well as a bunch of PRS, but I was like, give me that guitar. And it was just like the kind of Van Halen high gain rock tone that came out of that thing. Through, ironically, one of those little, actually a pair of those steel cabinets. I was like, okay, just like there it is. So that amp has that vibe. It's just phenomenal amplifier. The Vibroverb, 115 model, original speaker, original transformer, the best Fender clean amp ever in my opinion. The Pro Reverb, which is over there, second best. There's going to be a video thing coming up on that that I can't talk about. AC30. Sorry, Vibroverb. For those who don't know, sorry, I do need to unpack that. The Vibroverb was quote unquote the Stevie amp. Of the different amps that Stevie's used or had used, obviously the Dumble Steel String Singer is a clean amplifier. But for much of his career, his clean tone was associated along with the Super Reverb that was in the mix, but was the Fender Vibroverb, and it's got a sound to it. You're just like, oh, and it's just beautiful. It's a lovely, lovely, lovely sounding amp. The reverb is just perfect. It's just an amazing amp. They made 500 of them, and I found one on the gear page, classifieds. And it just has that vibe and that tone. AC30. Part of my mission in going out and grabbing gear at the end of last year, before the tax opportunity ended, was I was like, I'm buying a 64 AC30, and I found one, got a really good deal on it. Part of why I got such a good deal on it was I needed to do about $500 worth of work on it. But my amp guy, who is the amp guy, who I can't mention his name, but he's Joe's guy, Kirk's guy, Neil's guy. When I say Joe, I mean Satriani. And when I say Kirk, I mean Kirk Hammett. And when I say Neil, I mean Neil Sean. And he's the guy that I have the privilege of taking all my amps to. And he was like, this is one of the 5 best AC30s I've ever heard. So I'm really excited. It's got the original silver bells in it. That amplifier, whatever it is, it's got, and I'm really thankful for that. So an AC30, first of all, a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to sound like the Edge or that thing. AC30s are one of the best blues amps. One of the demos that I'm working on for the Celestian thing, in fact, I'm looking at that preset, that's where I ended yesterday, was the Shell Pink Strat, and I may change stuff around a little bit, but it's basically me playing through a matchless capture with some other stuff on there. But it's basically, I took another one that I did was I'm going for something that's kind of edge-like, and then I just kind of happened to switch into the neck pick, and I'm like, ooh. And so, and then at the end, then I kind of went into the Jeff Beck thing. I mean, it's kind of like all this stuff on the matchless. What people don't know as that AC30/matchless platform, there's a bunch of tones that you wouldn't necessarily expect. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. So there's just a bunch of stuff there. All right, awesome. And I desperately want to jump into the chat, but I'm going to attempt to just make it through here. All right, cabs. This is one of the places where I think people get into trouble, partially not knowing, and partially because they, I don't know. But it just seems to be one of the places that I think people's knowledge and opinion, it just gets a little, all the other stuff that we've talked about, you'll know what's working and you'll know why. You can't just swap out a cabinet like you can a pedal, right? All right, at the top of the list is the Marshall 1960A. If you're a musician that tours and travels, that cabinet loaded with the G12 75Ts. It's the most common backline cabinet you're ever going to encounter. It's one of the reasons for these Celestian demos. I picked those two right there as kind of, my 412s. I actually have, sorry, I'm still not getting used to when it's behind me, which side to point to. Oh, I get it. It's on my right. Okay. So that guy is I initially started off using the pair of 1960Bs. So in case you didn't know, it's on my left, so it's going to... All right, I'm a moron. It's on my left. Holy cow, it's on my left. 1960A is the slant, and the B is the straight. And so you put the slant on top. Now, it seems an interesting thing. It's like, why did they do that, right? If you're putting the top cabinet, it's got a slant, what's that for? I think the reason they did that, because back in the days, they didn't really have PAs as we know them. That was such that if you're playing in a venue kind of with a second tier, those top speakers are pointing towards it. Because on a stage, you're never going to hear those. But as a kind of like, which one do I get and why? I personally prefer the sound of a 1960B. I think it's a better sounding cabinet. But that is to say, the straight cabinet. But the slant, again, this is what I learned in jamming with Joe, which is like when you walk in on somebody else's set, and you pretty much can guarantee you're not going to be in the monitors. You got to be able to hear yourself unless you want to just fly blind. That slanted back speaker in the 1968s, that's why those have become my favorite cabinet. Again, they're the most common. So just kind of understanding that cabinet, knowing that at some point or another, you're probably going to have to deal with it. And that means that also perhaps having one, you can get them used for about $350. $325 on a good day. The other thing that I do, slightly insane, but I will make sure that there's an amp, or I bring an amp that I test with. I'll bring at least a 6-string or preferably a 7-string. I'll palm it and go, and I will literally, sorry folks, and don't do this at home, I'll literally put my ear in front of every single one of the speakers and listen for, because there's a thing, there's a, and there's a certain type of muck when a speaker is on its way out, or there's something wrong with it, you'll hear it, but you got to hear each speaker individually. In any case, they're great. The Mesa Boogie Theo cabinet. Hey, I actually got it right this time. Those cabinets. Steph Burns, for those of you who are familiar with him, played with Huey Lewis in the News. Sheila E. Zucchero, for those of you that hang out in Italy. Brilliant guitar player. Lovely guy. Kind of a Jeff Becky vibe. Had a lovely career. And again, it's just a great guy. But he used to play at this venue in Walnut Creek with kind of all the local Bay Area fuse heads, folks who could really play fusion, that is. And he had, I think, a pair of those that he would bring. And they sounded great. But when I, again, tested the Mark II C+, the guy had a pair of those, and I was like, oh, my word. So I went out and I bought 2 of them. Actually, no, I'm sorry. One's on loan from a buddy, and then I went out and bought a second one specifically for the Celestine demo. And if you're looking for a 412 cabinet vibe in a 112 speaker enclosure, which seems like an impossible thing, it's not. And I should say the high gain thing, not only the high gain thing, but the high boogie gain thing, like the tall boogie. Oh, I took them to storage. The tall boogie cabinets, those 412 cabinets, like if you want to pummel somebody in a non-bright kind of way with a cabinet, those tall boogie cabinets, they're just phenomenal. That's like the baby version of it, except for the fact that when I brought the Mark II-C home, the next day I'm kind of here in the house with one of those because there's only one here. And Melissa's at the opposite end of the house going, at some point I kind of come upstairs and, unlike yesterday when she was like, that sounded really good. She was like, that's just way too loud. And like the amount of volume that those things can produce and project and just maintain their integrity it's got. You can see they're ported, which usually means they get floppy in the bottom end. Ports kind of have a tendency to, we're emulating, open back cabinets. Not it. That cabinet is like, honestly, why put it on there? If I had to pick one cabinet for basically anything, that would be it. Phenomenal. Speakers. I love pretty much all speakers, except for the ones that suck. Very nondescript. Generally speaking, but not exclusively so, because I've got like 2412 cabinets. All of them have Celestines in them. I spend more time in 412s or 112s than I do in other combinations of things. So it means that kind of just by process of elimination, I am a Celestine guy most of the time. But the Eminent stuff is great. They really make some amazing speakers. The EV stuff is great. They make great speakers. I've spent a little bit of time with the Warehouse Guitar stuff. and that stuff's really good too. But at the end of the day, the people that have been my iconic players, more often than not, were using Celestion stuff in 412 cabinets, right? So the point being is that the F12 M150 is their full range live response. They call it, as opposed to FR, they go FR-LR. And as I've mentioned previously, Celestion, 65% of their business is in the PA and sound reinforcement thing. I always thought, their big claim to fame, and it may be what they're best known for, is making guitar stuff, but that's not the majority of their business. Which means when it comes to a speaker that can respond full range, full response, or flat response rather, but have the guitar response in terms of the way it responds to transients, and it's a direct replacement for your traditional cabinets or combos. I really like the F12 X200, but I think the M150, like the sound out of that cabinet, that speaker in that cabinet, that's the triple cone, you can see it exposed there. I'm just like, it just sounds phenomenal. It sounds and feels phenomenal. I was just like, wow. And then also at the latter part of the day, I spent some time with that kind of as the one that I was hearing. No, I was actually hearing the F12 X200, the 200-watt ones in a blend with the F12 M150, which means that it was just a blend. But the point being is a combination of these things. I absolutely love them. They're great. But I think the M150 is kind of at, the sound that I got out of that cabinet with the Petrucci guitar and the Petrucci amp capture inside the quad cortex. It's like you just kind of go, if you're into the heavy thing, I could just live there. All right. So in terms of the power amp thing, because more and more of us are going to be toggling back and forth between analog amplifiers and the digital domain. And so the power amp side of things is going to become an increasingly important part of our conversation, whether we like it or not, right? The great thing about a power amp, when it's solid state, is, especially when you're reproducing the amp, the sound of an amp that's been profiled or captured, that's at the sweet spot, when you turn, as I alluded to before with the JVM 410H, when you turn the master volume up and down on an amp like that, the total character of that amp shifts. And one of the great things about using kind of a solid state power amp, if you're so inclined, or a Class D power amp, is that it's generally very linear. That is to say, it produces the same sound at quiet volumes as it does at loud volumes. That's one of the other things that these speakers do really well. Also, it just means you can just take all that stuff that you normally have to be really loud to get and just bring it way down. So I, for the first time yesterday, had a chance to fire up the Seymour Duncan Power Stage 170, which is kind of down here, just out of range. The one bummer for me was, as I kind of went to plug it in, for some reason, I just figured it was going to be a 2-channel amplifier. It's not, it's mono. But I was really impressed with the way it sounds. Down over here, you can see it. That's the Power Stage 700. If 700 watts is not enough for you, you have problems like I do. Bon appetit. The other thing is that for those of us who like to go MIDI, this is the GA60. This is from my friends at AIM. Basically, Larry Mitchell, they've made a double version of this called the LM120, and Larry's tone ain't sucking. And it's basically, this is a 60-watt power amp that you can power up on your pedal board. It's amazing where stuff is going. So I'm super impressed with just those, and it's just like, it's very cool. You'll also see that, I'm going to forget the name of what the heck that little puppy is. Right, the Quilter. I actually haven't tried it in the mix of things, but that little Quilter thing that a lot of people love for their FR solution, I'm going to try that because it's got a built-in power amp. I think it's 100 side that I can run it out into some of the speaker stuff. And the idea is to kind of use, for this particular Celestion demo, and the range of demos that I'm doing around all the popular modeling devices / platforms. So I think there's going to be 6 of them all together. including one on using plugins and that type of stuff live. Which, by the way, just I've said this before, but I will say it again. If you're wondering what's the next thing, I believe, and I've been wrong many times, the next thing is basically running computer algorithms, whether it's on your computer or on some computer-like device, that allow you to use all your favorite UA plugins and all your favorite neural DSP plugins and your BrainWorks plugins. And so Gig Performer is the thing that one of those demos is going to be based around. And that enables you to just kind of use your plugins as part of your live rig. And because it's MIDI controllable, you can use a MIDI controller to basically switch presets just like you would with a traditional rig, except for the fact that you're using all your studio, like the Lexicon 224 reverbs, all of that crazy stuff. But the reality is that we're going to be increasingly faced with a non-traditional amplifier set of choices about how we're going to make ourselves loud. And that is a consideration. All right. That gets us to the studio. This is where I become a very expensive friend, ladies and gentlemen. So hang on. And then I'm going to jump to, what's going on, Rob? How you doing? Good to see you, my man. Great to see you. Mike, hey, what's happening? Rob, hopefully your quad cortex will land very soon. Awesome. Thanks for joining us. All right. I look forward to jumping in the chat. Anthony Best. Anthony Best, how you doing, my man? So Anthony is Manuel, hey, what's going on? Dan, hey, sorry, this is what happens when I get in the chat. First of all, hello, everybody. So Anthony Best was actually the guy that hooked me up with my contact for the Mark II C Plus. He has a streaming channel, and he's great, and he's a lovely guy, and you should check him out. All right, so as I was saying, the studio stuff. So here's where I become your best friend when it comes to spending money, and your spouse's or significant others' worst enemy, but not in a mean-spirited way. I'm a Universal Audio guy. I think their plugins are phenomenal. I almost started to say the best, but I will hold off of saying that. But I think what they've done that really kind of separates them and makes them my go-to, not only audio interface, but plug-in platform, is that they've got emulations of stuff like the official emulation for the Lexicon 224 reverb, which is phenomenal. Probably my favorite reverb, which used to be preceding that, the EMT 140 reverb, which was basically modeled after the one that used to be at the plant. And that EMT 140 reverb was heard on like Rumors, as in Fleetwood Mac's bazillion selling record, and basically just a bazillion giant records that came out of the plant. It's a plate reverb, and it sounds phenomenal. They just have a bunch of other stuff, and everything they do is great. Their interfaces are phenomenal. One of the things that I love about what they do, they have this little thing that's it's kind of like what I call this kind of invisible layer between the audio interface and your computer, and it's an application called Console, and it basically functions just like it's a virtual recording console. That one is you have the option of loading plugins on the channel strip and either quote unquote printing them quote unquote to tape, or at least just monitoring with them. So it's analogous to the recording thing, and their sounds and their audio interfaces. I actually have two. Apollo Twin and Apollo Twin and Apollo Duo, I think is what they're labeled. Two different ones, but those are great when I need to travel. They're phenomenal, and they sound great. They're really easy to use. They have a big giant control. My Apollo 8 over here is kind of you can't see it, but it's kind of like my 8 input, which generally speaking, all the YouTubers out there, they're using one of these. Like when you see their rack, you're like, there's another Apollo. There's another Apollo. It just kind of is the go-to. Nothing wrong with the other stuff that's out there, but this is really kind of the fishizzle. I'm a Pro Tools guy. Fluff, who is a dear friend, is a Logic guy. So there's a bunch of folks that live in the Logic world. For the same analogy that I made before about coming from the tape world, the interface in Pro Tools is analogous to a tape recording experience. I came up in recording studios. There's a guy named Richie Corsello who took me under his arm. Joe Satriani got a call to play in a band called the Johnny Gunn Band. He was too busy. He said, call Doug. And Joe knew Richie because Joe played on Love and Rock and Roll. Go to iTunes and find that. But it's Joe Satriani as a session player. And I've said this, all right, I'm not even going to say I said this before, I'll say it again. I'll just go once again. Joe Satriani is a great lead player, but his time and his rhythm playing is impeccable. One of the best rhythm guitar players on the planet, and his time and his feel and his intelligence of where he sits in a track, second to none, really. I mean, he can make it greasy like Keith, but he has his own way, just in the same way that he plays lead. That when you listen, he's got a rhythm guitar style, and he's brilliant. I mean, honestly, I like his rhythm playing as much, if not more, than his lead playing, because he's so good. And, you know, we don't get paid to play lead, most of us. All right, Pro Tools. Joe's a Pro Tools guy, in case you're wondering. Dynamount. So these cool little mic movers behind me that you can't really see, they're awesome. Not only because you don't actually have to get off your duff if you don't want to move a microphone, but the thing is that especially in a critical recording situation like I am with these Celestion speakers, like I've really got to get the best possible capture of the sound of that, recreating what's going on in the box, in this case with the Quad Cortex this week. And then, you know, as I go down the line with all these other different things, you know, folks like you depend on my ability to get that right or wrong. So it's not just a laziness, it's a matter of the fact that, like, I know what that sounds like in the room. Then I need to be able to do my best possible to reproduce that. So there's an app that comes with it. I actually have the new version and the older version. Let's see, which one looks fancier? Connection. Oh, I timed out. Let's go with this one. And I'll share this app. Hold on, let me see if are you? Wait, you're that one, right? Which one am I moving? Maybe they both timed out. They both timed out. Okay. Well, let me just show you the app because it's really exceptionally cool. Unlock scene. There we go. And let's get to the right app. No, I do not want to update my system audio. Never update your system audio in the middle of a live stream. Dynamount. There we go. Let's go there. How's that? Oh, we've got my overlay. Hang on a second. Let me hide the overlay. There. No. Hold on a second. We want this. There we go. So that basically is what you can do. But the other thing is, you look down below, there's this number 1, 2, 3, and 4 business. That enables you to create presets. So then as you kind of go back and forth, and there are times with, you know, when you change a sound, or you change a guitar, sometimes you find one position sounds a little bit better than another, and to be able to create presets for specific sounds and guitars that do a better job of capturing that, the essence of that is really, really, really important. And it's and just for nuance, the strange thing about this particular gig is that I am taking IRs that have already been captured and I'm placing them to a speaker and I'm miking them, which is why the gig is not about putting something like I would traditionally use, like a Roswell Pro Audio Mini K47, which, by the way, we'll get to in a minute. But if you're looking for the, like, one mic, can't go wrong, best choice, reasonably priced, that would be it. But in this particular instance, I am using, and I'll come back to this because it's on the list, there's a company called DPA, which many of you have never heard of, but there's a microphone called a 2011C, which is on the list, and we'll get to that in a minute. But it is the whole thing about DPA microphones is they're incredibly transparent. So you're sticking a transparent microphone, in this case, literally on the center of the dust cap, which is someplace I would never, ever put a 57. It'd just be like I just, you know, people would just go like, he's lost his mind. He's gone thoroughly daft. because it's just too bright. You usually have to back it off, and that's due to the character of the way that microphone hears things. But on the 2011C, it's actually where you start. It's right smack in the middle of the dust gap. It's a very unique thing. So the idea of capturing a speaker model or a speaker IR through a microphone coming out of a speaker is a very strange thing indeed. But I'm really excited about it because that's the sort of geekery I love. Let's turn this back on. Here we go. So the Dynamount allows you to just kind of move that. So, but I just got to bring those back online. And so what's neat about it is those are the X1R and the X2R. That one right there is the X2R. That's the new one. Pete Thorne's got a great demo of that. I'll have a demo of that pretty darn soon. And then that's the X1R. So I've had these here for a while. And it's just really great to just either be able to use this app or the application that you saw there to just move. And the X1, you can move it obviously on two axes. But I've also got the V1R, which moves on a single axis. And then they have another one that allows you to also then kind of have an up and down axis. I guess that would be a tri-axis. Going Mesa Boogie on you, sorry. All right, so the Roswell Pro Audio Mini K47, I talked about that a minute ago. For the money, there's no microphone that you can use on as many different sound sources. And you don't actually have to get up close and personal. Generally speaking, about 8 inches is the place I start, depending on the amp and the device. And there's a video that is on the Roswell Pro Audio YouTube channel that I'm using on a bunch of different sound sources, and it sounds great. And it's very reasonably priced, and it just sounds great. All right, the DPA 2011C. At the opposite end of the like $1,100 a mic or something like that. I don't know. It's the above $1,000 price point per microphone, which for most people this is like it's just not that thing. The thing that makes the DPAs very unique is that they started off as a measurement microphone company, or the predecessor of the company, where the company where the founders of DPA started was a measurement microphone company. So that's in the DNA. So the idea is they go these super accurate mics. Their mics are used by the likes of Sting, both in the studio and on stage. There's a video that I actually will. I love getting myself into trouble. I will actually. I'm going to see if I can grab this video. Excuse me. But it's me using I think it's using the Sting microphone, which I think is the 4011. But there's a video. Oh, I know how I can find this. Okay. But I love lots of different guitar sounds. It's the opposite of the high gain tone, but this particular sound is probably the best guitar sound I've ever gotten. And it was with using the DPA. I think the 4018, I think is what it was, 4018A. So with DPA, you can kind of take off. Basically, there's a microphone and a preamp that come together, and they are not cheap, but they're great. And so this, I think, was the 4018, which is the same thing again that Sting uses. Did I not include the link to that in here? I'm hoping I did. Yeah, come on. Okay, I'm gonna have to dig. Now that I've spent this much time talking about it, I gotta dig it up. Man on a stupid mission. Here we go again. Okay. So the point being is like they just sound. Here's the thing: is a microphone. As you're getting started with microphones, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this. Is that a microphone is the lens. That is to say, let's imagine that we're talking about vision. And in an aged body like mine, at a certain point, your vision lacks the clarity that I did, when I was in my 20s, when I had 20/20 vision. And so the microphone is that thing that allows you to clearly see what's in front of you. And for those of you that are over 45, you'll probably know what I'm talking about. But the things that you need to see sometimes are up close or far away. And sometimes the best way to capture the sound of a microphone or an amplifier or a sound source is either up close or far away. So the right microphone for the right source and the right placement is not kind of like a one-size-fits-all. And again, for the one-size-fits-all, the Roswell Mini K47 is, in my opinion, the best possible mic out there. I mentioned the 57, and I have yet to get to the 121. So I'm going to wait there. But let me see if I can get in here and grab this clip, because I really want you to. I've spent so much time yapping about it. Nothing like watching some guy type in his password on a live stream. Okay. I sent it from my upstairs computer, which is why. Yeah, I get it. Where's my sent files? Okay, there we go. All right, there we go. There it is. Sorry, my bad. It's the 4015. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And then what I'm going to do is once it's downloaded, and this is the other thing is that I opted today not to include video production, but at some point sooner than later, I'm going to do either a standalone video or something like this around the video production side of this. But because there are not, everybody here, I would guess has at least one stomp pedal, one guitar, and one amplifier, right? So with that said, these things all seem relevant. All right, let me pull up this video. And usually the audio level between the two is pretty good. I'm going to mute my audio for just a minute, and hopefully I'll remember to unmute it when I come back. Let's see how we do. Hey, I remembered to unmute my microphone. Let's bring the overview back on. No, not that one. There we go. For me, that guitar has so many layers of sound. Like there on the top, this is kind of almost, it's like a papery texture. If you were to take a piece of paper, strange analogy, but as you rustle the paper, and then it's got this body and the depth and all the warmth, and like there's so many, it's for those of us that go back to web when it was 256 colors. Now, where you had to use dithering. What was that compression? It's been decades. I don't remember the name of that compression program. But the point being is you used to have to basically compress images to be able to get the web to serve them. So the ability to have all those different colors of the sound come through and accurately capture that vibe, that was a big deal for me. So that's the 4015. That's an expensive mic, but again, sometimes to capture all the nuance, and arguably most records that you hear, it's not actually capturing the whole picture. That's not the gig. The gig is we're going to create this little box that the guitar lives in, and there's a bunch of information below 100 hertz. Get rid of it. Put what's called a high-pass filter. All the highs pass through, and below a certain point, traditionally 100 hertz, all that information thrown away or filtered out. Okay, SM57. Cannot go wrong with an SM57. You just need to, if there's a dust cap, your speaker's got a dust cap, just start at the edge of the dust cap, boom, about an inch away from the grill. And that's a great place to start. If it's too bright, move it further away from the center of the speaker. If you want it a little bit brighter, move it closer. And generally, I put it right on axis at a 90-degree angle to the grill. We're at 121. love Royers. I have a great relationship with my buddy John there, and they've been very, very good to me. And so the combination, especially with a 121 and a 57, is kind of the perfect combination, which is why I mentioned that in the Fender, the first version of the Tone Master Deluxe Reverb. So if you kind of do a double pass, either with reamping or just, kind of double track something, you pull up the 57 on one pass, and you pull up the 121 models that are in there, slash captures, slash IRs, and then you get the combination of the 121 and the 57 together. It just sounds great. The 121 is a beautiful, beautiful microphone, all on its lonesome as well. Lots of body and fullness. It's great. I left out a microphone. Okay. Yep. Give me a moment. This goes in the higher end range, so let me get up here. Audio Technica. I hope I get the model number right. I think it's the 4040. Give me just one moment. So the other amplifiers that I've had the privilege to spend time with, AT4040. There we go. No, that's not it. Hang on. Yeah, I'm not down with disinformation. Give me a moment. I can talk while I type here, though. The other type of amplifiers that I spent time with, that I would imagine there's enough tone tweakers in here that would be interested, because they're hard as all get out to mic, is the Dumble style amplifiers, like the John Petrucci JP2C. There's just all this crazy information that it's a little bit more than your average microphone can actually pick up. And so once I can remember, there we go. And this, it's bad when you start pricing high to low on Sweetwater. But it's not, there we go. 5047, there we go. But in terms of my go-to mic for miking Dumble style amplifiers, including Dumbles, AT5047. So if you have a Dumble style amplifier there, and you want to so endeavor, get up there. That's just it's a great sounding mic. It's not cheap. What are you? $34.99. And the interesting thing that I kind of have alluded to is there's different microphones that I use for different things. That's why people have a mic locker. There's nothing wrong with that. Just in the same way, you have different guitars for different things. But it gets expensive. Triad Orbit. One of the things that I've been doing is basically they make stands, but it's kind of like the unstands. All my lights, my microphones, those are actually kind of some of the few Triad Orbit floor-borne stands. But they basically, first of all, you can retrofit the tops on any of your existing microphones. I should say stands. There's nothing easy to get to at this moment. I don't want to get myself in any further trouble. But basically, they have a huge range of products that make it really easy to first of all, if you're thinking about putting together a video studio and have the ability to kind of have some sort of wood or in construction enough that if you need to drill something in a wall, you know where to hit the studs. Basically, all my lights in all my studios, there's 2 rooms here, are suspended off the ground. In my upstairs studio, the camera that's in the main body of the room, that's suspended from the ground. From the ceiling. And everything's kind of mounted to my desks because, as I'm wandering around with a guitar, I don't want to be bumping into a stand. I don't want to kill the positioning of a shot. I'm a little anal retentive when I'm shooting, which means I don't want my camera moving. It will drive me nuts. Most people will never notice. It will drive me batty. So Triad Orbit makes a ton of really awesome, not cheap products, but they are phenomenal. And they've been really good to me as well. PreSonus. Not necessarily what you might have anticipated me saying. The chances are, in a perfect world, so I as you guys know, I work with Worship Musician Magazine. I'm the quote-unquote editorial director, which sounds a lot more important than it actually is. What it means is I'm the editorial and advertising director, which means I build relationships with companies. I either review gear or I have a team of writers that I have review gear, quote-unquote, for me and for the magazine. And in turn, I build relationships with manufacturers to bring them in if they're not already, or to grow deeper relationships so they understand how we value what they do, and they continue to advertise in our publication. One of my quote-unquote writers, or I should say a better way of saying it, is one of the writers that I have the privilege of having on the staff is a guy by the name of Michael Hodge, who plays plays guitar at Joel Osteen's mega church. He sent me a little video this week of him kind of at rehearsal, like on his little break. And, it's like this ginormous venue. And I was like, right, I forget sometimes. Point being is Michael gets to do all the Focal stuff. So he's reviewing the new Focal monitors. So if I were to choose, in the higher price things, I'd be a Focal guy. But I purposely kind of have let that piece go, and I let somebody else who I love dearly let them own and manage that part of that relationship at some level of personal cost. Because I would say that if there was a kind of like brand that I would want to use their speakers, it would be Focal. That said, one of the other speakers that came in on review were these PreSonus Aris E8, and generally speaking, I like an 8-inch woofer. They're a two-way speaker. There's the E8, and then there's the new version of the E8 that's got some other letter after that, and I've got those upstairs. But they are, for the money, in my opinion, the best, relatively neutral, but still really warm for guitar speakers I've heard. And literally, I plugged them in. I was like, oh, these sound great. They have a kind of a proximity circuit. For those of us, and in case you didn't know, if you mix too close to a wall, or especially in a corner, and you get too close, you're going to get a buildup in bass. That means your mixes will actually be bass light because you're hearing more bass than is actually in the mix. And so you will record things inaccurately, thinking there's more bass than there's actually there, and you will mix them inaccurately, which basically means that you've got two things working against you. And then all your other decisions. 3, every decision that you make about where you blend other tracks in is flawed. So the ability to fine-tune the placement of in the room of the speakers is one of the other things they have. I've been just incredibly impressed because everything that I do, literally everything that I do, is based around the decisions that I make around these speakers ultimately. That's huge. Isoacoustics. Those Marshalls are on stands. Ironically, you can't actually see anything from Isoacoustics. No, you can't. But they basically make the amp isolators that I have underneath all my combos. But basically, every major studio in the world, like, I don't know, Abbey Road, has their speaker isolators. And they're best known for the studio monitor isolation. And their products are second to none. And like literally, it's a funny thing that I do as a kind of a content creator. I'm always watching, when I see somebody's studio, like a fellow video content creators, I'm going, what are they using? What are they using? And the idea of decoupling your studio monitors from the environment in which they sit. And as an example, and I'm going to presume you've done this, but if you haven't, if you have a sheetrock wall in your house, take your guitar and put the headstock up against the sheetrock wall and hit some chords, and then pull the headstock away. And then you will truly understand the conductive energy of when one surface is directly touching the other. And one of the other things, I'm not great at explaining it, but I've gotten enough coaching from Dave Morrison, who's a dear friend from Isoacoustics. They actually took me out there to demo their stuff out at Sweetwater, which is kind of like the World Series of demos. It's really cool. And he's absolutely an amazing guy. And his products, I've had the privilege of kind of being there at the very, very beginning, and his brand has blown up. Lovely guy. His sons work in the business, and just a quality act. So the point being is that the ability to isolate the speaker from the environment by decoupling it is a big deal for, first of all, you don't get any of this weird again, when you stick your headstock up against the wall, all of a sudden the wall becomes a giant speaker if it's a piece of sheetrock. The other thing is that when a speaker is basically doing its thing, and I'm not super articulate with it. Basically, it goes forwards and backwards, as it kind of produces sound. And so the thing is that if it's getting information from a previous sound wave that it produced coming back up into the cabinet, because again, a speaker isn't just a speaker. A speaker is a speaker mounted inside an environment. So if you're then sending the information that speaker sent out a minute ago back up into that environment, you create what Dave calls smear. And it's basically some sort of bizarre, it's just flipping noise. And so what happens is your mix loses the clarity and definition to which those speakers were originally created to have. And it is an invaluable part, especially I've got the Aperta, whatever they are, the newer stands, but I basically had all the stands, and they're underneath all my speakers, and they're phenomenal. And then the other one's the Stage 100, I think that's what they're called, and I've got like 20 of them floating around here. I can get up off my butt for Dave. Hang on. Are they upstairs? Did I move upstairs? I'm going to start rolling stuff around. Oh, this is bad. Don't ever do what I'm doing here. This is bad. This can only go south. By the way, look at this stand. I mean, holy cow. Like, that's a Triad Orbit stand right there. Literally, I can't do what I do without these vehicles. Gosh, if this thing falls on me, that would be the stupidest thing ever. So there you go. There's one of their stage. No, it's a stage 1. Sorry, I'm not going to. Okay, hang on. Lose the overlay, Doug. You can do this. There we go. So that's the edge of the stage 1 board right there. And it's got these isolators that isolate it from this environment. If you think about it, like some little rolly rack, it's really probably not the best acoustical environment to be placing your speakers, especially if you're serious about doing demos. I cannot say with enough authority how much that will transform your studio experience, both at the capture point, both at the track building point, which is the pre-mixing stage, and then at the mixing stage as well. Just can't go there enough. All right, Radial SGI. Of the range of Radial products that I love, the Radial SGI is a studio guitar interface. Ironically, it's used most live at churches, but it enables you to basically take your pedal board and then with the transmit box, the TX box, convert that signal to a line level for a long run. And then at the other end, you've got a receive box. And so basically allows you to kind of convert, again, your instrument level signal. There's all this talk about, cable length and buffers and all of that. Well, this kind of eliminates that, because the challenge with your average guitar cable and your average instrument level signal is that after about 20 or 25 feet, you start losing high end. Now, let's back up one step just a little bit. Because there was this guy named Jimi Hendrix. There was not, to the best of my knowledge, one single buffer in his entire signal chain. His tone wasn't sucking. I'm just saying. And, no lack of high end, no lack of clarity. You could hear all of Jimmy. So we want to put it in context. Like, ironically, we get all these wacky ideas where we drink a little too much of the Kool-Aid, where it's just like, I gotta have a buffer. I was watching this thread, where I gently weighed in. Mason, by the way, from Vertex Effects, has a great video on do different buffers make a difference, and he actually demonstrates that sonically, and the answer is yes. So am I a buffer fanatic? No. All I care is, does it sound good? Regardless, the SGI enables me in my upstairs room, and I'm wondering if I've got a photo of this. With my AC30s from one of the shows I did for the Worship Guitar Show, which, by the way, is my Tuesday night stream. Nah, I'm not going to have it. Nope. That's too bad. Hold on. Let me see if that Photoshop document's got it buried in there somewhere. Give me a moment. There's a shot with my AC30s. No. Okay. So but basically, I have my pair of AC30s in what's called the amp closet, and so and there's also a big silver box hiding back behind there. That's an isolation booth here that I may end up using today. But the ability to then have your board and all your stuff, and then when you send it off to the amp, or most importantly the speaker cabinet and the amp, you can isolate it somewhere. And so you have a tendency to, because again, you can only run a speaker cable. Most of us don't have a 100-foot speaker cable. So the AC30s live in a closet that's been acoustically treated. The SGI travels via mic cables through the ceiling, and they drop down in there. The other thing that I got yesterday was some 100-foot HDMI cables. So I can actually now connect these two rooms together, and I'll actually, once I kind of get a little bit, one of the things I don't do a lot of doing in these one of the things I don't do a lot in these shows is actually playing. As kind of I get some of the other things dialed here, the ability to demonstrate, some of the sounds of those amps isolated in that room, and use these fancy new 100-foot HDMI cables, and I can actually turn on that camera up there, and I can be playing down here and go split screen, and you're looking at the amps, hearing them in real time. That's kind of where I'm headed with this stuff. Because it's one thing to talk about this stuff, it's another thing to demonstrate it. Which means I probably should split these out into separate shows at some point and actually have sound samples. What a clever idea. I'm being facetious, I joke with myself. So the radial SGI, though, is if you're like, hey, it's just too loud, I can stick that amp in a closet, put some mics on it. It's a great solution. The radio stuff is great. Great. And also another great product from them is a reamp. John Cuniberti, who I mentioned previously, co-producer and engineer on just a huge ton of Satriani stuff, including Surfing with the Alien, invented the reamp. And so the idea is you basically are able to take your direct guitar signal that gets recorded into the computer and then run that back out at instrument level in the front end of an amplifier. So you can get the pass that you're looking for, but not necessarily have to be out of your mind about the tone. Or maybe you really want to take your favorite Marshall and turn it to 10. But you can't do that, in the middle of the night. So you do something and you just capture some direct guitar using some plugin or something. Let's say you capture the direct guitar and you're monitoring with the plugin. And then you take that direct guitar sound and then you run it back out. By the way, sorry, yes, I need to make an addition here. And I'll warn everybody, I am an expensive friend to have. Where am I going to put that? After mics, before Triad Orbit. Okay. You are the Millennia. HV37, right? HV, there we go, dash 37. Okay, so when I got serious about one of the rabbit trails that I was going to go down and continue to do is on reamping. So I reached out to the smartest, most educated person I could, which was Joe Satriani. I said, which box do you recommend? And he recommended two of these Millennia music and media system, but you just met Millennia. It's the HV37. It's a stereo version that I've got here. You can't really see it. But it's phenomenal. And, the whole thing about that particular mic pre, and it gets back to what I was talking about the 2011 Cs before, is there are certain instances where you want like a Neve mic pre where it adds some color, it adds a little bit of something. These guys are all about accurately capturing the sound of the guitar itself and adding zero color or zero discernible color. They're phenomenal, and I got a stereo pair just so I can kind of leave one setup, if you will, as a workflow for bass and the other setup on the input for the workflow as a main guitar that I would potentially be working on track. And that's an invaluable part of my reamping process. That's kind of one of a handful of pieces of gear that I will never sell. Waza tube amp expander. Okay, so I sometimes have to be very careful how I negotiate this little piece of this, so I'm going to do my best. One of the things that I previously mentioned was the Rev D20, which has all the two notes remote software embedded in it. I have the privilege of working with the two notes folks, and we'll be doing more so this week. The Captor X, both the 8 ohm and the 16 ohm, are phenomenal, and I'm going to be doing a bunch of work with their stuff. Amongst other things, they do a great job at capturing, but all the back end stuff that they've built out is second to none. Nobody touches it. That said, the thing that makes the Waza Tube Amp Expander, for me, the singular choice on captures, which for most people, again, the 2-note stuff, you're going to do great there. The Universal Audio aux, you have the benefit, then you have immediate access on tap to all the UA plugins. Lots of great stuff there. I've got the Mesa Boogie Cab Clone IR. Their reactive load box, phenomenal. What's great about that is it's got a ton of Boogie's IRs that they're like, here's our take on what a Boogie cabinet should sound like on tap. You know, that's a very unique piece of technology, and under the hood, it's powered by 2-notes, as previously mentioned in a Glenn Fricker video. We're not going to go there. So the point being, and it's a great box, and so the point being, the Waza Tube Amp Expander has the ability with these two controls right here, where you can adjust the reactive load to match the power amp section of the actual amplifier. There's a thread that is on the gear page around the Quad Cortex, kind of around, you know, what's the best reactive load, and arguably the best reactive load is the actual speaker that you're potentially miking or capturing in the process of capturing. However, trying to capture the essence of a speaker that's in the room that you're miking versus actually kind of going, hey, you know what, let me just take an IR and either load it in there or load it somewhere else in the process of this, makes it a much easier process, because for me, I've never been able to kind of have a sound in the room and then try and, other than with a microphone that's on there, match that. It's just a giant time suck. And that doesn't mean that, like, hey, I'm just going to put a mic on there and get a great sound. That's different. But when I'm talking about replicating the sound of the amp in the room identically, again, I mentioned the Audio-Technica 5047, phenomenal job of doing that with the Dumble amplifiers. But you know, usually you're just kind of going, I'm going for a vibe. Here's the sound source. And most of the time, you're not going to get it totally identical. With a microphone on its own, not trying to do a capture, you can get kind of close. But as soon as you start using some sort of reactive load and then trying to use some sort of IR and trying to match what you're hearing in the room, I've never been able to do it. And it's been, you know, I spent a lot of time doing it and gotten really frustrated. So the idea of being able to go, okay, well, I'm going to use this reactive load here. I can fine tune it to match the power amp, which means that I'm going to take the speaker out of the solution here. I'm going to create my tone here. I have the ability to, with the 100-watt power amp in there, to power up a cabinet if I want to get a little bit of rumble going on here. But I'm paying attention to what's going on here. I can literally fine tune the reactive load such that the quote unquote virtual power amp, the virtual speaker cabinet and power amp interaction that emulates there is in many cases identical to the actual power amp and speaker emulation of what you would have if you ran that amplifier, this is the source amplifier, out into said, you know, into whatever speaker cabinet that sounds like, you know, that if you will is the equivalent of the IR that you're going to pull up. But that is to say, to make that make sense, the speaker and the power amp have this interaction. When you use the Waza Tube Amp Expander, it basically speaks back to the power amp, and as frequencies change and levels change, it's giving a reactive load. So this thing thinks it's seeing a speaker cabinet, and this in going, hey, I'm your wannabe, I'm your placebo cabinet, and this placebo cabinet is taking this information coming from the actual power amp and giving information back based on an algorithm that is tuned to this particular type of power amp. That was better. And that way, the information coming back to the power amp is synonymous with the information going out. So it most closely replicates the accurate interaction of the way this power amp would impact a speaker cabinet. And this speaker cabinet, based on this power amp, is going to give information back to the amp. And that's one of the things. Presence is basically an interactive result of that process. That's as far as I go down that rabbit trail. So it's also got an SDE3000 built into it, this guy, which is just a great delay. D'Addario Modular Snake. Do I have one of the boxes here on here? No. So one of the other things is, in addition to having microphones in the amp closet and cables going through the ceiling that basically tie in my upstairs studio and my downstairs studio and vice versa. That is done through the Diodario modular snake. And it's basically a cable. It's an 8-channel snake that you've got these modular bits that you screw onto it. And it is phenomenal. So that's how sound moves back and forth. So we've got a guy that does a little work on the house. And when he's here next week, in addition to having those the pathways for the audio to travel, he's going to run those 100-foot HDMI cables. So I'll be able to kind of be in either location, because those HDMI cables are monodirectional. I'm going to have two of them put in so I can toggle back and forth between these two locations, which means I can be in two places at the same time, and or in the same show, I can have I can be in one room, I can have a movie play, and the next scene goes to the other camera, and then I can be in the other room. So it enables me to have a moment to dash up or down the stairs. But the point being is why would I want to do that? Well, let's say I have two different rigs set up, and there's a whole bunch of other gobbledygook and cameras and mics and all of that stuff. That enables me to do that. It also means on the production front, I kind of have that convenience of I can be in both places at the same time, which is kind of an interesting trick. So the modular snake, it's a really, really clever product, and I've been super impressed. Okay. Holy cow. Take me home, James. An hour and 47 minutes later. All right. Okay. Holy cow. Where do I start? I think this time I'm going to do something incredibly, and I think I'm going to probably regret this. Oh, my word. Watching myself pant. Tony Lybrand, what's going on? So Melissa has sent me... Oh, there we go. Okay. I'm going to start, first of all, there, going on Ivo. Hey, so there is a link down in the chat, and I'm going to... And I have, by the way, created a short URL for this, so... I wonder if that's going to be there if I paste that. It is. No, it's not. Give me a moment. The craziest thing is, in addition to all this stuff, Chrome. No, I know where that's going to be. You're going to be over here in Firefox. And I can find you there. Oh, I put you down in the description too, I think. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put this update titles. There we go. All right. There we go. I'm going to place this in all of the chat just so everybody's got it. This is the link to the question doc. That's on my personal. And this is on YouTube. Oh, YouTube's a little grainy today. That sucks. All right. And then that's that Facebook. That is my personal. So let me switch browsers. Chrome. Good. One of the things that's happened that's made this all a little bit more complicated is that, there we go. Awesome. Here we go. Oh, my word. They've changed the login system on Facebook that makes you have to log in as multiple. You have to choose your login to be able to access the different pages. And I got to tell you, when you're getting ready to go live on a stream, it is really annoying. Okay, so where are we? There we go. All right, let's add this here. Andrew Bonica, hello, my friend. Okay, so if you guys have any questions, I just posted the links there. All right, so let me start there, and then I'm going to head back into the chat. Stan Hemphill had a question last week. But it's perfect for this. So his question, my dear friend Stan, in your opinion, best full-featured amp for church? I'm actually currently using a very small mic, Line 6 Spider 4, 15, and an old Zoom G5 effects board, and I've been able to survive. What's my next step? Thank you again. Listen to this. Even with Focal Dystonia, you helped me get to my playing, to get help me get to playing guitar for church as the most fulfilling thing I've ever done, aside from my wife and kids. So this is one of my favorite things. So every so often I work with students that have got something that is impairing their ability to express themselves on the instrument. And as I got to know Stan, he had this a condition, and has a condition called focal dystonia, and it means that all the fingers can't fire as he would want them to. So what we did was we identified the fingers that worked best in combination, including a bunch of stuff with taking, where traditionally you would play a minor pentatonic like that. And he would just be able to do it with two hands, and that included chords and little triads. So he worked his backside off. So Stan, if you're watching, and even if you're not, that would have been the Rev D20, or two of them, if stereo is your thing. Best full-featured amp, can't go wrong, sounds great into a speaker. Again, you can run out either pre or post power amp. You can run it at 4 watts or 20. It's got an effects loop. You've got the 2 notes remote software. It is first in class in a class of amps that's going to be emerging. And I think it's going to be a long time before those guys are moved out of that class. Andy Guitar, Andreas. How you doing, my friend? Great to see you. All right, as you obviously have a massive collection of tape delays, would you recommend a full-tone tube tape echo or a solid-state version? Which do I prefer and why? Great question. Let me see if I can gently rabbit trail this. I'm going to use this as, if you will, kind of a tape echo teaching moment for those that are interested. I started off, my first tape echo was the Roland RE150 that's kind of over my shoulder there, and I don't think it's visible in this shot. No, it's just kind of there-ish. That's a solid-state unit, no tubes. Great sounding unit. It's still working. You need to clean the heads every so often with a Q-tip and some sort of alcohol that's not overly abrasive. And you can still find replacement tapes for those. They sound great. I have an EP1, an EP2, and an EP4 Echoplex. EP1 is the first one. I don't think it's the first ever tape echo, but it was one of the really, really, really early ones. And it's a great sounding unit, but it makes a lot of noise, both in terms of it's the room going shh, as the tape is moving and the motors are going. The other thing is it's got some hiss, as do all the Echoplexes. The Rolands they had the benefit of being a little bit later on, and they're quieter. First of all, there's an outfit in Australia. Let me see. It's on the Reverb. Was on the Reverb homepage. They've changed their image. I think it's Echo Fix. Hang on, let me Echo Fix. Yeah, there it is. Echo Fix EFX2, and it's their take on a Roland 201, RE201. I think RE stands for Roland Echo. And the RE201 was the more popular one. But I always hated the reverb in it. I just didn't like the sound of it. But a lot of people did. So they've got that box that's new, and it's basically like their take on it. And it's great stuff. At some point, one of those will show up here. To answer your question, the TTE, the Tube Tape Echo, is the unit that Full Tone made. That's phenomenal. You'll see people, although I don't see him actively using it right now. Joe Satriani loaned me his. And actually, ironically, Joe also has what I believe is an EP1, and he brought it to one of my lessons. I think he just kind of thought, let's reward the kid. back in 1980 probably. And so we just kind of, we used to have this little DM2 delay, Boss delay, and he just kind of showed me how to use effects. But that was the first Echoplex I ever played through. And so, years later, he loaned me his Tube Tape Echo. It's a great sounding unit. You'll see it used by Keith Richards. I think I have seen a photo of the Edge using it. It's a great box. Great box. Great box. So in terms of, if they have a solid state version, I would opt for the tube version. But I would also do as much, peripheral research and see if he made a solid state version, was it because he was going for the EP3 or EP4 vibe? And then what you want to ask yourself is, which tape echo generation are you into? If you're into the Eddie thing, that's an EP3. If you're into the vintage Jimmy Red House sound, that's the EP1 or an EP2, where you've got the tube in there. And hopefully that answers that question. But I love it. Yes. All right, Alan, what's going on? I don't have access to a GT1000 core. How are the amp models compared to the Line 6 models? Hello. So first of all, if you go over to my YouTube channel, which is where you already are, there is a partial series that I am going to be coming back to in approximately 2 weeks on the GT1000 core, where I run through a bunch of stuff. And it was the first or second week where I run through a whole range of different sounds. The sounds are phenomenal, and that's one of the reasons in this Celestian business that I'm doing. There's going to be a week that's dedicated just to the Boss side of things, because they don't get, for what here's the thing. I think Boss is such a big company. When people think about a buffer, that ironically think, oh, I can use a Boss tuner. It's got a buffer built into it, right? In a pedal board guy. So Boss means so many different things to different people. They can't always have a laser focus on their marketing. So they go, hey, if you're interested in this type of product, you need to check out this thing from Boss. And sometimes you just figure, oh, it's another Boss product. They just decided to build one because they needed to. And I found myself saying that around the Boss cables that are, come here, that are literally all over my studio. So, the funny thing is that they showed up at the guitar camp. I think it was a Vi camp, I think. And they came and they had these cables. And I thought, great. Just what the world needs now, another cable. And, and I love these guys, so don't get me wrong. But I just had that kind of snarky. It's just like, oh, I get it. They needed, another SKU to sell. Let's push another brand gently aside. And then one day I was here in the studio and I kind of pulled one of the cables out because I needed a cable. It was close by. And I went like, I love this cable. They basically become my go-to cables. They don't make a mic cable that I have, at least. And so for the mic stuff, I use the Megami stuff. But the Boss cables here are phenomenal. So the point being, Boss, people just for whatever reason, it's kind of like how some people look at Line 6 when compared to Fractal. So to answer your question, I think they stand neck and neck. And I think the thing that is one of the advantages that Boss has had, like the neural DSP folks have had, is to watch this thing evolve and come in a little bit later. And that gives you the advantage of being able to have that perspective. And I think they've used it wisely. Robert, what's going on? Thank you, Alan. Let's talk Celestians. I've been using an MC90 forever. How do you compare the F12M to that? Also, have you tried the BN12300S? Great full sound speaker. Have you tried the D-Mark solid state power amps or AEG Eric Gale's Raw Dog? Robert, okay, so the MC90, correct me if I'm wrong, is the well, you know what? Hang on. Let me fire up my browser. Celestian. Holy cow, I've lost the ability to type. Yes. All right, that's the Mesa Boogie Black Shadow. I just wanted to double check. First of all, the Black Shadows sound great. I've got them in a ton of different things. So the thing about the F12M is it is unlike the Black Shadow, which is designed to basically be a high-powered vintage 30-esque speaker. This is designed to be a full-range flat response, or as they call a live response. So it's intended to respond to your pick attack and your transients like a traditional Celestion, but it's designed to replay speaker IRs. So it is a completely, by nature, and I'm not going, oh, you should have known this. By design, it's a radically different animal, night and day. That said, which I think is the heart of your question, when you play back IRs through the F12 X200 and the M150, do they behave like a Celestion? That's the thing that's great about it. It's like, yeah, they do. And yesterday, like the 7-string, the Petrucci thing on the triple cone in that little baby cabinet, I was like, there is nobody. Like if you came in, say, hey, here's my 7-string, I want you to play. It's like, what are you playing through? Like, I think most people would just kind of go, I'm playing through, obviously some sort of Mesa Boogie, probably the JP2C and a 412 cabinet. It's just like, I had an amazing experience doing that. I'm just like, there it is. It's just so, and I was just like, I hope I can reproduce the magic that's happening in the room, was what I really thought. I'm like, I hope I can just really, even if I get 85% of it, I'll be really happy. I have not tried the DV Mark stuff, and ironically, my buddy Sabo in Italy is I think their marketing and artist relations guy. So I need to check that out. So the other thing is, you asked about a BN 12-300S. You are a geeky speaky. Oh, the bass speaker. Oh, interesting. So it's a Neo bass speaker. Interesting. No, but the thing is that I remember seeing these as I've been kind of in Celestial Line, going, that is the coolest. Oh, hang on. Let me see if I can pull this up. No, Parts Express. I think this is the coolest speaker I have ever seen. For some reason, it just reminds me of a Porsche every time I see it. Let's pull this into the broadcast. We're going to go, I think that's Chrome. Let's see if we can get over to Google Chrome. Oh, my word. Do I really have that many windows open? Yeah, look at that speaker. Like, that is so cool. Holy cow. No, I'm not updating system audio in the middle of a live stream. Thank you. All right. Great question. And I love Eric Gales. Holy cow. I think I answered that. Yes. So again, if you're going to be using IRs into this thing, the things that you love about the Black Shadow, I think you'll love about this, and then some. Is the PreSonus really the standard for audio interface? Oh, like the SM50 event? No. It's a great question. When it comes to the YouTubers, 90% of the people that I kind of like, what are they using? When you see they're using the Universal Audio Apollo 8, the larger form factor. I should say, the kind of like the YouTubers, the Fluffs, the Pete Thorns, the RJ Ronquillos. That said, the most popular audio interface, I think, is probably going to be one of the Scarlett series, and hang on, let me see if I can find this immediately. And I can actually probably definitively answer that. Give me just 1 second. And by the way, Sweetwater is where I go to check everything. So I'm going to just search audio interface, and then you have the ability to basically, in all of this, you can, okay, they've created another, all right, they've broken it down just... There we go. All right. So they've added some additional things here. Hottest audio interface deals. They're smart. what's new in audio interfaces, because it's always nice to check out what the latest and greatest is, and then trending in audio interfaces. And that is where it comes down. So at the very first one on that list is the Focusrite Scarlett 2i2. And so and it's third gen. So the thing is, the Focusrite, I would say, is probably the most popular, the smaller form factor audio interfaces that are out there. And as I have, as said previously on this show, let me find Focusrite. There we go, Scarlett. What I believe you want to look for in these bad boys, and I think it comes in on this one. Just one sec. You see the back side of this puppy? Nope. Okay. What I'm looking for is the ability to have a light pipe connection. And basically that is a spec that was created by a guy named Marcus Ryle, an absolute genius. And it basically, for those of us who used to have Sony home stereo systems, it basically was this protocol that sends digital audio over this laser thing. Why am I not seeing you? Whoa, that would really bum me out. Does that mean all the third generations ones have dumped light pipe? No. That's not it. They might have. Oh, that's really kind of sucky. Hang on. Sorry. So what it is that Focusrite makes an Octapre dynamic, and I think it's probably the Octapre Mark III dynamic. And basically that's a FireWire protocol that enables you to take one of these smaller audio interfaces and add an additional 8 channels. And that is a big deal, because it means you can have a small, more affordable one that is, one, great for having at home, and two, is great for being able to take to your rehearsal space. But it looks like what they've done is, there it is. No. Okay, I found it. So it's the 18i8 has got it. It's this guy. Hang on. And there may be a couple of others, but we don't need to go there. It's this guy. There we go. And so what we're looking for on this, let's see if I can zoom in. Are we going to see that? There we go. It disappears when I do that. That optical input right there. Let's see if I can. There we go. So that little bit right there, it's right below say that 10 times fast. Optical input is very special. That enables you to add that extra little bit of expandability that enables you to just have one smaller box that sits conveniently on your desktop. You can take it with you to your rehearsal space. Then if you need a larger 8 mic pre's with each individual channel having its own defeatable compression, which the one that I've got is a Mark II. They have 2 different levels of compression, and it just makes it so you have all this flexibility. It's a great unit. Yes. Okay, Stan Hampill is watching. Stan, happy Easter, my dear friend. I am so proud of you. You know that, though, don't you? All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go backwards, because if I go backwards, hopefully I'll catch people that are still here, and I realize I've been a little long-winded today. So, but as I do this, let me just very briefly just go. If you're still here, I'm gonna scroll through and just say hello, Ruby, Greg, and Anthony Best. Love you, Emmanuel, Dan, David Ritchie. Hello, Tony. Love you, my friend. Okay, great. David Tedeschi, great to see you, my friend. Okay, so let's just scroll down here, and this will have pulled everybody. Andy, great to see you. Bruce Adolph, of course. Bobby, awesome. Thanks for jumping in. Brenton, great to see you, my dear friend. Alan, always a pleasure. Rick Costa, hello. Mike Mitchell. Eric Sands, hey, what's going on, my dear friend? Great to see you. By the way, Eric, if you're still watching, your commercials that you guys are running on YouTube are awesome. The Metallica one. So Eric Sands is the national sales manager for Positive Grid. And if you spent any time on YouTube, it's impossible to have escaped the great YouTube commercials they got going. So well done. All right, Mike, great to see you. No glasses, love it. That's a great question. Andy asked me, why don't I have a JS model? I don't have a JS model. I actually really want a Chrome Boy. And I also want the new 24 fret one. And the real reason is because I get a limited number of endorsement guitars. I just haven't mustered up the cojones to ask Joe if I can borrow one of the guitars that he's not playing. That is the real reason why. That's a great question. I too am twangling my pink custom Strat. Way to go. And real men play pink. Alan, I got your back too. Awesome. Brian Jones, great to see you, my friend. Thanks for fending off the haters. Let's see here. The struggle is real. Okay, Bruce, hello. There we go. Oh, good. Rick, love Strats. Every American Strat I've pulled off the wall played like butter since 1990. They've been consistent most of their existence, in my opinion, the best bang for your buck. Kudos, Fender. Your guitars play like butter. Look at that. That's kind of feedback we love. That's funny. Uh-oh. That's the sort of thing that could make for some frustration. I hope that gets dialed. Look forward to hearing it, my friend. Four guitars down. That's so funny. It's awesome. Boom. Love it. Hey, great question here. If anybody knows about a DLL error with Amplitude 4, and I could, and somebody's going to make some snide Windows comment. So, and I almost started, so please refrain. I think Rick has had enough frustration that he's probably looking for positive reinforcement, not frustration. All right, excellent. Richard, what's going on? Oh, excellent. The nothingness that you're striving for. Yeah, it's a funny thing that was a moment. And what he's talking about is the Fractal Audio, Billy Hallidale at Tom Morello's guitar camp. And literally the trail on this thing went out for like 20 or 30 seconds. And I'm just sitting there. I think Fluff was with me, and because he's actually he did a thing where it wasn't just a remix. I think he re-recorded a whole Perfect Circle song or something crazy like that. Fluff's a genius. Like first of all, people obviously know him as a brilliant YouTuber, but he is a genius producer and engineer. Genius. Like I'm embarrassed to actually talk about recording with him, because his level of knowledge is so deep. Really studied. So Billy plays his thing, finishes his last note, and it just goes on and on. And it's just in this little, and I was just like, it just got this perfect arc that was so natural as it got quieter. Because sometimes, when you do a straight fade, it's just, all right, it's just getting quieter. But this had this little, and I was like, and each time it just got that perfect amount quieter. Like, when you're setting a delay or reverb, you're kind of like, I want it to taper off. Just like the taper was like perfection. And each little delay was just perfect. And it just got a little bit quiet and had the right amount of distortion where, like a vintage tape delay, you don't want it too clean, right? You want a little bit of stuff, like Andy was asking about, do I want the tube, do I want the solid state? The tube just is a little finicky. Tape is finicky. And it just was, I've never, ever heard anything that came light years close to touching it. Nothing. Nothing, 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 nothing. Okay. Oh, thank you, Griffin. Appreciate it. On that note, cheers. All right. Note to self. Hold on. How about literal note to self? BISCO. I've been doing a lot of typing today. Thank you for that, Griffin. And welcome, 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 welcome. All right. Let's see here. Okay. I am still thinking Captor X for home. You cannot go wrong with Captor X. So let me sing 1,000 praises. They're, first of all, a great company. I love working with those guys. You will need either an 8 ohm or a 16 ohm version. But great box. But the technology that then you're able to add all their virtual goodness. Like, you know, and I love the UA stuff, but it's UA's plugins. What you're getting with the Captor stuff is the ability to rabbit trail. Let me swap out the power amp. Let me choose which power amp I want to use. Let me choose which cabinet, which speakers, which microphones. There is tone tweaking and custom building the amp of your desire, or, you know, taking whatever it is that you're doing. For example, one of the things that's going to happen in this whole capturing thing is the idea of like, and I need to research and double check with the Two Notes guys. If you take the load out of the preamp out versus the how you can just capture the preamp and not the power amp. So I need to do a little bit of research there. On the D20, it gives you at the exit point of the amplifier, the XLR, the choice to either be pre or post power amp. Again, those guys, they not only went to town on what they produced, but the research that went into it, they were asking all the right questions. Again, that's got the two notes embedded in there. Great, brilliant technology for being able to go, I want to take what I want out of the amplifier, and then I want to be able to add what I want to add after. Nobody touches them. Nobody. And that is, you know, when you get into the studio, again, it's really hard to capture the exact sound of your cabinet in the room. When you start using this kind of reactive stuff. So the idea is generally at that point, you know, I'm just like, I turn the cabinet off. I just want to be in the box at that point and then just dial in phenomenal tones, you know, because honestly, you can usually get better or somewhere equally close or, again, just different. Because the problem is, and this is my thing, is I fixate on like, I want to recreate that exact sound in the room because that's the way it sounded in the room. As opposed to like, let me just kind of capture this amplifier and make it sound great inside the box. The reason I labored over that is part of what I've wanted to do as a gear demonstrator is to go, hey, when you plug into that amplifier, I want it to sound that way for you. So that's the reason for that. But in terms of practical, like, let me just plug this in and pull up a sound, can't go wrong. Can't go wrong, can't go wrong, can't go wrong. I got some playing to do. Rick, cheers. Okay. I am an expensive friend. It's not a good thing. Good, we got the Vibreverb. Eric, hello, my friend. Mustang 100, come on. That's right. Listen with your ears, not your fingers. Amen. Yes, you did say that. I echo that. And the AC30 is a great country amp. Oh, sorry, I didn't leave that up very long. It is, again, people think, oh, it's the Edge amp. That's great. It's like, it's so much more. Yep. Boom. Thank you. Another Steph fan. Steph Burns. I love that guy. There we go. Here we go. Come on. Those big recto cabinets. Andy, by the way, is a great guitar player. Oh, that's great. Yeah. So, and the funny thing is, for those of you recording, the quote-unquote place you always start is the lower right speaker. For whatever reason, that's the one that people seem to go to, just in case you were wondering. Rob, I hope your wait is a short one. Again, Mike, hello. Yeah, hello, Manuel. Good morning. Buenos dias. Or good morning. Isn't that cute? It's got this little kind of powder coated finish, which I always love. Like it's really cool. Focus, tell me about it. You are the coffee. That's very kind, my friend. Uh, Absolutely. And this is the whole thing. And I'm presuming you're reading the comment, so I'm not going to read it. Why his song sounds so great is like, first of all, he has this great rhythm bed off of which he can then create great melodies. But rhythmically, he has these great parts that provide this phenomenal context for everything to make sense. And there is tremendous listenability just to the rhythm guitar parts, even though most people don't listen to it. But again, the riff at the beginning of Surfing, right? It's just like once the main guitars come in, you kind of don't really pay much attention to the rhythm guitars consciously, but it's there for the entire track. Yep. Yep, yep, yep. Yep, yep, yep. A DI box does the job. Also, I love the Palmer Da Capo. I use that for ramp also. Hang on. What's going on, Kareem? Great to see you, by the way. The lack of salutation was a little rude on my part. Hang on. I got so excited about the Palmer Da Capo. I was like, I need to make some notes here. I have not tried the Palmer Da Capo. But one of the things that when I was doing the Guitar Hero stuff was I was using because at that point the Palmer, and I've sold it since, but they're kind of stereo speaker sim, and so they've been in this game a long time. So speaker box, a great DI is you don't want to have a studio with that one. But for a sound on a guitar amp. Okay, so so what I believe you're asking is like, if you're wanting to, capture this again, the reactive load box to capture the essence of the amplifier. And in case, it's easy to kind of, we're going to talk about reactive load boxes. Well, not everybody has had reactive load box 101, which is the idea is you got an amplifier, you got a speaker cabinet, it's loud, and not everybody can actually, have their head and their cabinet turned up at concert volume wherever they live. So you're like, okay, well, how do I manage this? So amongst other reasons, that scenario was why they, created these reactive load boxes. It basically means you can run your head into this box that it simulates a speaker cabinet, both because you can't run a tube amp without the majority of tube amps without a load on the speaker cabinet. I should say a speaker cabinet load on the power amp. And so that then allows you to use your tube amp, capture that sound, add the emulation of a speaker cabinet. I presume you know this, but if you don't, and then send that sound with the speaker emulation that comes from inside that box or related software, or just capture the essence of that amplifier, bring it into your DAW, where you can add a speaker IR loader like Celestion Speaker Mix Pro, which should have been on my list, and then in turn you're able to kind of at some point add a virtual speaker cabinet. IR stands for impulse response. So the idea is that it's not a DI box. It's actually a reactive load box that captures. It's analogous to being a DI box for an amplifier, absolutely. But what it does is it provides that load, such as the power amp section of that tube amp in particular thinks it's going into a speaker cabinet such that it doesn't blow it up. And in turn, it captures that essence of the amplifier. Great question. Okay. Daniel, what's going on? Pleasure. Welcome aboard. Thanks so much. Thank you. So Daniel and I met. I will actually. No, I'm not going to reveal the whole plot. I will just say that Daniel is a partner in gear in my gear universe. Thanks for joining us. I hope you're enjoying yourself. And it was great to meet you this past week. Welcome aboard. And I hope as you prepare for your journey, I hope that the whole process goes smoothly. And please do say hello to your mother-in-law and let her know her Echium festosum is lovely, especially the variegated Echium festosum. Welcome aboard. Thanks for joining us. Excellent, excellent, excellent. There we go. Always wondered if there's a difference in sound or feel when the cabinet is connected with a very long cable like it's done in studios. I would say, yeah. Anytime you put some distance between your guitar and the amp or the amp and the cabinet, it's going to make a difference. To my understanding, which is not great in this area, you can get away with a lot of stuff on a speaker cable that you can't get away with on a traditional, on the front end. And it's just because of how it loads. All right, good. Stan, I love you, bro. With great pleasure. I love it. Love it. Dwayne, what's going on? Great to see you, my friend. Thank you. Look at all those emoticons. Yes. Love it. Okay, cool. Interesting. So the interesting thing is that there's a quilter. I mentioned this before. Where'd the head go? There it is. Right there. And there was a cabinet that's here. I'm curious if that's in there. So that's, I love learning stuff, so that's great. Love it. Thank you for that. Good. I look forward to checking that out. Lurking. I love it. The lurker. I love it. Thanks so much, Brad. Appreciate it. You saw my response to your message. I take it. Bob Dobb. It's easy to hook up the quad cortex to a power amp. Instead, interested in these Syn 5052 power amp. I presume that's a Synergy. Just not sure how it all works. Okay. Awesome. Great question. And I love it that you're like, I'm just not sure. If more people ask you like, hey, I'm just not sure. So, great question. So literally, oh gosh, am I going to do this? Can I do this? Hang on a second. Let me, I may not be able to do this. So, yes, I can. Oh my word. Hold on. Oh, this is going to be so embarrassing. All right. So what I haven't done yet is cleaned up my desktop. I'm just going to go there. Hold on. Hang on just one second. I need to turn the zoom off. There we go. All right. So this madness right here is my coffee. So here's obviously the quad cortex. What I was testing yesterday at the end of the day, if you hadn't asked, I wouldn't be doing this, but here I am. Okay, so literally here's the output cable of the quad cortex. Now, on the quad cortex, obviously this guy right is here's the input. One of these guys, right, one of these pairs here, I guess I'm not going to flip this thing around. I think there's a second input. There is output 3 and 4. It's either this one or this one that is your 1/4-inch outputs. If you choose to do that, this guy is output 1 and this output 2, which by no choice and no option is going to be XLR. So this guy right here is a Seymour Duncan Power Stage 170, which yesterday I discovered is mono, which is fine. I just wasn't anticipating that. So literally, I came out of this cable, which is a balanced XLR, into a balanced 1/4-inch, which is, sorry folks, I'll cringe if I watch this later. But you asked a question, honestly, I wanted to show it to you. So basically, this is, fine, go that way, pokey. All right, so this is that cable going to the input of the power amp, right? And then this is the output of the power amp going through a very heavy-duty speaker cable. And I have these things, just about every cable that I've got has some sort of labeling on it. Let me do this without spilling my coffee, please. No? Okay, there we go. has some sort of labeling on it, so I know which cable it is, right? So this one says number 6. So this is not going to anything number 6, but I'm getting flamed here. I totally deserve this, but the point being is I'll have them in pairs. So by virtue, I know that this one's 6. This one's going to go to anything that's even, in which case would be 2, which means this one is going to go that's anything odd. So it would either be 1 and 2, or in this case, 3 and 4. So this is 3 going into here. This is a mono power amp. I'm coming out of the speaker out. This bass is just up the smallest amount, but that's just because it's there. And then this is the happy control. Woohoo! And honestly, and this guy, I would suggest turning the volume control on the quad cortex all the way up. And then that way you just adjust from there. The reason being, so you don't bump it. And you do have this great visual feedback there that I love. But I love the idea. I need a cowbell. But the idea is like, this guy's all the way up, and then I can choose what I want to do over here. You've now seen my desktop. Let's see, it's this one, right? There we go. Yes. Okay, so here's the interesting thing. You also, I'm going to take your overlay off. No, I'm going to move it down a little bit because it's such a great question. So I presume the Syn 5050 is obviously the Synergy 5050 power amp. And if it's not, then silly me. But you asked an implicitly important question, which is 2 power amp versus, some sort of Class D power amp, / solid state. Which, why, where? So the interesting thing is that as part of an ecosystem, and this is, unpacking this stuff has a couple of different layers. Most people, as they step into the modeling universe, will opt for a non-tube power amp because they don't necessarily want to add additional tube color to their sound, and then they'll go out into some sort of FR solution. That is a full range flat response solution. That said, one of the complaints that people have about modeling is like, it doesn't feel realistic. So back there, not visible, is a Hot Rod Deluxe 4 that I put the F12M 150 in. And the thing about the difference between the F12 X200 and the 150 is the 150 is a little bit smaller. They kind of took some feedback from different people. I think they both sound great, right? But because of the F12 M150 is a little bit smaller, you can fit it in places that you couldn't put the 200, which is one of the reasons I'm kind of using that as also the one that I suggest for people. And so I've got it inside there, and specifically that's an environment where it's the most popular tube amp combo ever sold, which means there's a ton of people who are going to pick up a quad cortex or fill in the blank modeler and go, how do I make it loud? And they're going to look around the room and go, what have I got? And that's why I was like, I looked around the room and I went, what have I got? Well, JC120 is one option, solid state. But although I've only got one of them, unlike the aforementioned Deluxe Reverb Tone Masters that do not have an effects loop, the Hot Rod Deluxe 4 does have an effects loop, which means I'll run out of the quad cortex in mono into the power amp in on that amplifier, which means I will be leveraging the tube power amp in there, which is going to provide some color. Now, the point that I'm kind of circling back to is I think there's some people that they're like, modeling it feels this, and it's gotten really, really good. And the Boss GT1000 Core, in my opinion, has the most tactile interactivity of any of the stuff that's out there on the market, including the Neural DSP stuff. It really has this kind of like, I feel like I'm playing something. The AI, side of this, which is part of it, is like, because you're really not playing an amp, but they've somehow made it such that not that it just kind of has X amount of like kind of, it does this, but it's like, in the same way that an amp, when you play it, it kind of expands and contracting, and you'll feel it move as you hit louder and softer. It's interacting with you. The GT1000 guys, the core guys, the Boss guys have figured it out better than anybody else on the planet, in my opinion. Everybody's got their own special celestial magic. So Uh, Again, so with this guy, where I came out of the singular output, you'd come out of both. And this is one of the places, arguably of any places, you definitely don't want to use go cheap on your power cables. That is to say, the two main outputs on the quad cortex, although you do have 3 and 4, are XLR outs. You don't want to, sorry, Guitar Center, go down to your local Guitar Center and buy 2 live wire balanced XLR to 1/4 inch. You want to go someplace online. There's some studio in LA that has a cable business, and I forget the name, but if you look Blue Studio Cables, you'll probably find it. That's where I have all those cables made. It's not like they're custom made. I just found them, and it's like they're great cables. That's a place where you want to spend your money wisely, because it's just having a great cable there is just really important. There are other things you can do. The Mogami stuff is really expensive, but it's great. I also have some Mogami XLR to balance 1/4 inch. So that is a place that's an important thing. The other thing is your speaker cables. Speaker cables are flippin' expensive, but you want to get a high quality speaker cable. And that stuff matters. Eric Vaughn, what's going on, my man? Okay, so that is to say, it's pretty straightforward. You go into your quad cortex on the input, and then you come out of the 2 outputs in the power amp. Then this particular, I should say, if it's a mono power amp, you've got 1 input, which is why I'm running in mono, and then 1 output on that. On something like what I believe is the Synergy, you'll have 2 inputs, so you'll come out of both outputs on the quad cortex. Now, another subset of that is, imagine your quad cortex is down on the floor, and your power amp is back at the back of the stage, wherever it is there. It's entirely possible that maybe not using balanced XLR to balance 1/4 inch for that run is going to be the best choice, in which case getting 2 really nice high quality guitar cables and using that, and using outputs 3 and 4. But just be conscious that as of this version of the firmware that I'm running, it is defaulting when you create a new preset that it defaults to outputs 1 and 2. And so you just need to change that. And I do not know if you have the ability to go in at this moment in the firmware and choose as a default which outputs that goes to other than the ones that it defaults to. That'll change. That's one of the areas that, they've borrowed some very smart things from Line 6. There's some additional things that they bothered not to borrow yet. The Line 6 guys, it's just really just done a great job on the routing, input and output options. It's one of the areas. Yeah. All right, Alan, have a great one. Thank you so much. Appreciate it, my man. Jay Kirkland, what's going on, my man? Great to see you. Happy Easter. JTM 30. All right, hang on a second. So we are talking about a Marshall. Let me just double check here. And I presume that's a 30 watt. JTM 30 is a 30 watt Marshall. Where are you? Hold on. So I recall. Yeah, there you go. There it is. Oh. Wait, no, I'm looking for the only 30 I'm seeing is a head and not a combo. Hang on a second. Hold on. And presuming that's the case, even if it's only the head. No, there we go. There's a combo. All right. Hang on a second. And then we should have an effects loop. Let me double check that is in fact the loop there. Gosh, I love reverb. That is a really nice looking amplifier. That's what I think about that. Hang on a second. Come here. Ooh, yeah, that is a really, I've never played through this amp, but I am liking this a lot. Hang on a second. What does that say? Valve what? Hang on. Oh, valve amplification. Okay. So the answer is, hold on, let me bring people over into, I just wanted to do a little bit of this. No, not that. No, I do not want No, I don't want to update that yet. Hang on a second. Google Chrome. Where are you? Why? Why are you not showing me that? Am I not in Chrome? Give me a moment. I'm obviously not in Chrome. There we go. All right. Oh, good. That's what we're looking to see. Okay, so, oh, you're not going to, okay, now that we're there, are we going to be able to see the pop-up? No. All right, so I'm going to just have to keep that in mind and not do what I'm doing there. So you should be able to see me cycle through that. Oh, no. Oh, I'm a moron. Okay. Oh, gosh. Yes, there we go. Okay, good. We're now in the right. Boy, it's really hard to. Okay, I've got this figured out. All right, there we go. So, all right, what you're looking for here, ladies and gentlemen, as you begin to think about this stuff, this is a loop business. And the ability to just run your modeler back into the return here means you bypass all this tone stuff. This is the one thing you want to be really, 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 really conscious of is quite often this is bypassing the master volume. So it means that that amp is basically on 10 the moment you plug it in. So just be conscious of that. I am digging this little amplifier, and I love the fact it's an actual plexi front. That is really cute. The other thing that's really cool on the back here, and the one on my JVM is great, is Marshall's emulated output is really good. This is a groovy looking little amplifier, and I've never played through one, and I bet it sounds great. So to answer the other implicit question is, would I suggest going into the front end of the amplifier, or would I suggest going into the power amp in? And I would suggest the power amp in. You probably don't want to add any more color. I think you probably already knew that, but just for the sake of conversation, I think that's a great idea. And what's neat is, my guess is it's a mono amplifier with 2 speakers. But the thing is that then, okay, so this is one of the other things in Quad Cortex world is as of now, and let's again, this is, let me back up a step and talk about kind of the subsets of groups of people using this technology. And it's based around the design of how the blocks are set up inside these devices. Currently, the Quad Cortex has got an amp block that is not a separate preamp and amplifier block. Now, it is to my understanding that inside the amp block, I could do a capture of just the preamp. That is to say, of your amplifier, I could go into the input and take the preamp out and capture that. In turn, I could do the same thing with the running into the power amp in. This I need to do some research on. I don't know. In theory, you would be able to run into the power amp in and then take an emulation, a cab emulation or some sort of reactive load on the power amp section and then capture that separately. I'm fairly sure, but not positive you can do that. And the idea is then you've got your separate preamp and power amp if you were, again, capturing that amplifier in particular. In turn, then you don't use the power amp model. You use the preamp model. Then you come out of your outputs on the Quad Cortex and you run into the power amp in on your amplifier. Now, of course, the other thing that you can do is, of course, just use the Quad Cortex and use the 4-cable method and just use your amplifier doing its grooviness. And then in turn, with the 4-cable method and with presets and with scenes, you should also have the ability to, and again, noting that some amplifiers, when you come in via the power amp in, you've bypassed the master volume. But in theory, you should be able to use that. You could create some presets where you could not only use that amplifier as the preamp section, but basically kind of bypass that little part of the circuit and just go run whatever, let's say you run a Bogner into your power amp section. So basically use a 4-cable method to kind of go into the preamp, then take the preamp out, run that into the quad cortex, then using 4-cable method, running that back into the power amp in, and then that's amplified out. So again, you can kind of remove that preamp section because ultimately you're traveling out of the quad cortex back into that power amp section. One of those pre-round trips is of the preamp of that amplifier itself. But you could just virtually go, well, let's not use that. Let's use a Bogner, or let's use a Boogie, and then use your power amp section and your speakers, which are non-FR, and it should sound great. The tube side of that, let's say another slicing and dicing is that you're now going to go, okay, well, I found some really cool capture of a preamp, and then I'm going to run into the power amp, and I now have a tube power amp, and I got rid of traditional speakers. It means you're not going to want to use an IR cab block because you don't need to. You got speakers in there. The other thing, though, is going, well, what happens if I use a full amp capture, run into the power amp in on that thing, and also run that back out into the power amp. So basically, you're stacking power amps. But so long as you don't start turning that thing up crazy loud, and at 30 watts, which I presume JTM 30 means 30 watts, you want to be conscious of the fact that as you start to get up above 6, you're going to notice some additional saturation, which may not necessarily be a bad thing. This gets to the other point is one of the biggest complaints that people have about modeling is that it's a little flat. That tube power amp section on top of a full amp capture may be that exact thing that you go, I love this because it's now adding a little bit of tube magic. So long as you don't get too far up into overdriving the power amp section. My guess is, and I haven't gotten there yet, I will be soon, is that it's going to be great. Oh my word, 2 hours and 47 minutes. You guys are lunatics. Holy cow. There we go. Oh my word. Hang on a second. Needs a cowbell on his desk. More candy wrappers. Good. All right, good. I'm glad we've commiserated on that. Wayne, awesome. Happy resurrection to you, my friend. Awesome. Victoria, hello. I love that you're on these. That is amazing. By the way, been working that G major scale. Awesome. Great. Positive response is great. More cowbell on that desk. Thank you. Again, thank you, Eric. That was awesome. Yes. Hello. We've done that. Again, always a pleasure, Jay. Gabriel, I love you. You are in many ways the poster child, poster man, but poster child, of course, is a figurative term, of person's going to adopt this type of technology. You've been in this analog world. You've got great gear. And it's kind of like, I think I want to climb into the box. Well, all of a sudden, all this stuff, like you're used to just plugging in your arc on, turning the amp on, is like firing away. So now all of a sudden, like, wait a second. So now I've got this amp capture. Now how do, and then I've got effects, and like, now how do I amplify all of this, right? It's like you're about to go on this little round trip of like, holy cow, where do I start? Where do I go? And, so it's an interesting, so with the Celestion videos in particular, I'm going to very gently, without being a tutorial on the surrounding gear, it's going to very briefly unpack. I'm using this particular amp because it's a solid state power amp, which means it's pretty much what you get in is what you're going to get out. I'm using, I still have yet to test it, but I think it's going to be great. I'm using the Hot Rod Deluxe 4 because a lot of folks have it here. And I think some people will appreciate the tube warmth so long as you don't turn it up too much that you get. And that whole little routing thing is just like, it's kind of like the first time you go, it's an effects loop. What goes where? It's like that first moment you're like, okay, and it's like the first time you get a wah-wah and you plug it backwards and you get whale sounds, right? It's like everybody's been there, so. And when it comes to power amps and amplifiers, almost 99.999% of the time, don't turn on your tube amp unless there's a speaker cable and a cabinet connected. And it's always worth double checking if you've been rerouting stuff. It's a serious deal. Almost every tube amplifier in the world, if you don't have a load on it, you can really do some serious damage. And many of the amplifiers out there that allow you to do an emulation, you can actually run that emulation without actually taking the amp out of standby mode. My JVM is like that, which I thought is interesting. So Brad, thank you. So I got a story. I got a road story for you. You are precisely correct, and thank you for reminding me of this. Dublin, I think. We'll use Dublin as an example. I'm there. You know, I've got like 10 minutes for a set change. I'm touring Europe with a GT1000. Plug in to the GT1000, plug into the power amp of the Mode 4 Marshall. Nothing. I'm like, WTF, and I'm looking at the clock. 5 minutes. 4 minutes. I'm like, I'll bet you anything. This is an amp that if I don't have an input, something plugged into the input of the amplifier, I'm not going to be able to use the loop. And sure enough, I just plug something in the input. I just turn the volume to 0. And then I was wrong. I actually loved the way that power amp sounded. And this gets us back to the whole thing. As I was using Mode 4, I don't remember what it's solid state. I think it is. But, it's designed to emulate a 2 power amp section if it is a solid state one. Sounded great. I remember in particular that night going like, oh, wow, that sounds great. But it was kind of like one of those things. This is like, the owner of and it was agreed, it's in the writer that whoever it was, either the venue or one of the bands was going to let me use their gear. The guy whose amp it was gone. So in any case, yes. So some of these amplifiers, if you don't have something plugged into the input, it will not let you use the effects loop. So you just got to remember to just turn any volume controls that are associated with the preamp. Actually, if you're just coming in post power amp, I guess it doesn't even matter because you're not actually sending signal there. So I actually didn't touch anything. I just kind of put a cable going into the front end because, again, at the point that you're putting a cable into the power amp in, you've basically defeated all the signal going through there. But probably a good idea to just turn any volume controls before with the exception, if you have So again, the master volume on some amps is pre-loop and some amps is post-loop. Ideally, in this particular case, it's post-loop, so you don't have to come back to your quad cortex or whatever, and you can just do it from there. But that, I would have forgotten to mention that today had it not been for you. So thank you for that, Brad. Yes. There you go. And this is the whole thing. It's like a bunch of us, as we begin to kind of going, how do we actually, amplify some of this stuff? We've got amps that are sitting around. And then at that point, to circle back on something I mentioned before, generally speaking, you do not want to use a cab block with a guitar speaker that was made for guitar. Let me rephrase. A guitar speaker that is not an FR, or in this case, full range live response FR, LR speaker that was designed for guitar, but playing back IRs. If it's a traditional guitar speaker, you want to bypass the cab block most of the time. Now, that said, in Helix world, where I've spent hands down the most amount of time, there have been instances where I kept the power amp on and loved it, and there were instances where I kept the cab block on and loved it, even where I shouldn't have. So all it is a matter of like, if it sounds good and it feels good and you're having a great time, there you have it. More Angus Young, I love it. Come on. Okay, thank you, Jay. Like I said, when I saw this color, I was just like, oh, I got to have that. And it was just for a review, but then kind of like when it came time to collect this, and like, okay, what do I need to do here? And I should probably not have this stand right so close to the headstock. It's a funny thing about gear. Like little marks that show up on my guitars and basses. I'm like, how did that happen? Okay, all right. So, ladies and gentlemen, at 11:55, and first of all, thank you for hanging out. It's almost 3 hours. You people are lunatics. Now, I realize most of you would have had the common sense not to be here the entire time because it is Saturday. I don't know. You could have been hunting Easter eggs or something. Hey, wait a second. Hang on a second. I missed a couple of people here. Just 1 second. Friedman, good to see you, my friend. Happy Easter. Shane Wise popped in for a bit. Still building tones on my HD 500X for tomorrow morning. HD 500X is vintage gear, so yes. And I'm playing bass tomorrow morning. I'm pretty excited, actually. By the way, I love playing bass. And for those of you Sonia, what's happening? Happy Easter to you. Great to see you. Hey, Sonia, what's happening with your expression pedal? Inquiring minds want to know. And when you have, when you get ready to come to market, please send one. I'd love to do a demo. That would be fabulous. For those of you that don't have a bass, it's the greatest instrument. You just like, it is in the same way that we were talking, and Andy Guitar was talking about how Satriani's rhythm playing is at the heart of what makes his music so good. Working on it, good. Waiting for it. Awesome. Laying great bass parts that just have it. It's such an, unlike guitar, where you kind of have to change tones to build dynamic levels for the most part, the bass is that one instrument that you can really use to set dynamic levels in your recordings, that it is one of the most valuable vehicles in the recording process that you can come across. So if you don't endeavor on bass yet, may I encourage you to do so. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have some Saturday stuff to take care of, but it has been a great pleasure hanging out with each of you. Thank you so much for hanging out on all of this. 3 hours. Phenomenal. I hope to serve you well in your journey. And it was actually Brian Felix, again, thank you so much. Andrew, and everybody. David, the ability to actually just kind of go, all right, here's the stuff that I use, this is why I use it, is something that I don't normally have the freedom to do that. So this seemed like the perfect opportunity. I hope that serves you well. Feel free, most of these shows, there's a theme topic, but at the end, generally what I try and do is have some open questions, such as, when you go to spend money on gear, I want to make sure, to whatever ability I can, that you have the most fulfilling experience possible. And so it means that not only that initial excitement you plug in, but like a year from now, you're like, that was a good purchase, right? That it served you well. But not only that, as we kind of unpacked some of this stuff, it's like there's the initial purchase of like the amplifier. But again, like Rob was saying, that little 30-watt amplifier is going to serve him really well right now because he's going to get the quad cortex. He's going to go, all right, this is cool with my studio monitors. Let me plug this into my little JTM 30, and you're going to be like, wake the neighbors. The neighbors are going to know he's got a quad cortex. And by the way, I spent a bunch of time yesterday in pre-production for today just building mono patches. And I'm a stereo fanatic, and for all my gumming about stereo, I was super happy and blown away with how great it sounded in mono. I'm like, huh. And Larry Mitchell schooled me on kind of dual mono as opposed to everything having to be in stereo a couple of weeks ago in a really lovely way. So for this particular range of stuff, I'm going to be hanging out doing a bunch of, I love it. Going down the pickups rabbit hole. Oh no. Want to replace there we go. Yes, that's a happy rabbit trail. But the great thing is that, the folks at Fishman, they leave so many different options. I think that's a Fishman that's in there. I could be wrong. But those Zach Myers, by the way, that's a lovely guitar. Did you get the green? Trampus green, I think is the color. And then there's whale blue. That Trampus green, I was like, what a lovely guitar. All right. So the point being is that some of this peripheral stuff about I bought it as a combo, but now you're going to use it as the power amp for your quad cortex when it arrives, which I hope again is soon. That's really cool. And then when Sonia brings her special controller expression pedal to market, you can use it with that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out. This has been so much fun. No, it's the blue. No, the whale blue is also gorgeous. Thanks again. Have an amazing Easter, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Always a privilege, always a pleasure. And until then, cheers. Doppler out.